I'll show you how to build a full stack application that will look fantastic on your portfolio using FastAPI and Python on the back end and JavaScript and React on the front end. We're going to have an API, we're going to have authentication, we're going to have databases, and I'm going to show you how to integrate this with an AI or with an LLM to actually generate questions, as you're going to see in this example. There is a lot to learn here. Let me go over a quick demo of the project and then we'll get into it. Okay, so what I created here is a coding challenge generator. This, of course, is what we'll make in this video, and you can extend it and make it much different. That's how I set up most of these projects. So we go over all the hard stuff, and then you can extend the project and make it your own. So pretty much what you can do is you can select a difficulty here for a coding question to be generated. So I can go with something like hard. I can press on generate challenge. It's going to take a second. You'll notice that my challenge remaining goes down by 1 because we're only going to allow the user to have a certain number of challenges per day. And then it gives me a question. So which design pattern is used to ensure a class only has one instance and provides a global point of access to it? That is the singleton pattern. So we can press that and then it gives us the explanation. Now we can keep doing this for different difficulty questions, or I can go to the history and I can view all of the questions that I've generated under this particular account. Now for our accounts and for authentication, we're going to use something called Clerk. Now this is my favorite authentication provider. It makes it really easy to do auth. You're going to see all of the features in this video, and I'm proud to say that I've teamed up with them. They've sponsored this video. They're really easy to work with, and again, they're free. You don't need to pay for this, so we can use Clerk in the development environment, and you'll see how much of a better experience this is compared to if you were going to write your own authentication, which can be a huge pain. So for example, if I sign out here, you can see that it brings me to this Clerk sign-in page. I've set it up so you can actually sign in with Google, but with Clerk, you can have all kinds of different sign-in methods. So you can do Facebook, you can do GitHub, you can do pretty much anything you can think of. They have it on Clerk, and you can enable it from a simple dashboard. So from here, I'll just sign in with one of my accounts. So maybe I'll go with this email right here. I'm going to blur them out so that you guys don't see them. Brings me to the page, and then you can see same thing. I have obviously no history because I haven't generated anything yet. I have my 5 remaining challenges and I can go from there. Okay, so that is a demo of the project. Let's hop over to our code editor and start writing this out. I'll explain everything and walk you through it step by step. So I'm inside of my code editor here, and we're going to go ahead and get started by setting up all of our various dependencies. Then we'll start writing a bunch of code. Now you'll notice here that I'm using PyCharm. This is the editor that I prefer when working on really large Python projects, and I do have a long-term partnership with them. So if you do want to check out PyCharm, you can get a free extended trial for 3 months of their pro subscription by using my links in the description. You'll see why PyCharm is the best in this video. They have a ton of features specifically related to Python that many other editors don't have. And again, it's what I like for these large projects because it supports things like FastAPI out of the box. Okay, so we're inside of here. What I've done is I've just opened up a new folder. So you can see that I've got this secure AI app with authentication. If you are using PyCharm, you can do that by going to File, Open. You can just make a new folder, so you can press this button and make one on your desktop or something and open it up. Or if you're in another editor, then I assume you know how to use it and you can open up a new folder. Now from here, I'm just going to make a new folder inside of this directory called Backend. This is where we're going to store our backend code. And I'm going to open up my terminal here in PyCharm and start setting up the backend dependencies. Now, as I mentioned, we're going to be using Clerk. Now, Clerk will handle all of the authentication for us, but we do need to do some setup on the front end and the back end. So the basic idea is that Clerk will handle things like issuing our tokens, but at some point when we want to have communication between our front end and our back end, we're going to need to send the tokens that Clerk issues us. These are authentication tokens that identify the user to our back end. So I'm just going to give you a quick gist of what's going to happen because we're installing some of these dependencies. Essentially, we're going to sign into Clerk on our front end. Clerk is going to authorize the user, and it's going to issue us an authentication token. That token we can then use to send to the backend, and our backend can go and ask Clerk and say, hey, is this token valid? And if Clerk says it's valid, then this means this user has the permissions to access our backend service. Okay, so we have a front end, we have back end, and we have Clerk, and essentially we have this special token for all of our users that we exchange between the front end and the back end, or really the front end just sends it to the back end to identify the user that's using our application. It'll make more sense later, but I wanted to quickly go over that. Okay, so for our Python dependencies, well, we could use something like conda or venv. I'm going to use a new tool that makes this a lot easier called UV. Now, I have a video on UV. I'm going to put it on screen. It's very simple to use, and this is the website right here. I'll link it in the description in case you want to download it, and it works just like pip, except it's significantly better. So if you're working with pip, you can just copy what I'm doing here with the pip commands, but UV is what I would suggest using. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cd into my backend directory, and I'm going to type uv init and then dot to create a new UV project. UV will handle all of the virtual environment stuff for us, and we can just add dependencies using a simple command. Okay, so now that this is set up, what we're going to do is look in this folder, and you'll see that we have a few different files. Now, we don't care about the main.py or the readme file, so I'm just going to delete both of those. Okay, and this pyproject.toml file kind of acts like your requirements.txt file, where it's going to store all of the dependencies for the project. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start adding dependencies using the uv add command. So I'm going to say uv add, I'm going to add FastAPI, I'm going to add uvicorn, I'm going to add SQL, and then alchemy like this. Okay, let's make sure we spell that correctly. We're going to bring in python.env. We're going to use this to load in some environment variables that we need later on. We're going to bring in the Clerk SDK for Python. So Clerk has a package that we can use with Python for the authentication. And then we're going to bring in OpenAI because we're going to be connecting this to, OpenAI's like GPT API in order to generate those questions kind of randomly or using the LLM. So I'm going to go ahead and add those, and you'll notice that this pyproject.toml file, I think if I refresh it here, will have all of these dependencies now added inside of here. Okay, so everything has been installed, the backend is set up, and what we're going to do is just start creating the directory structure and some of the different files that we need. And you'll notice this .venv folder here, this is where your Python interpreter is stored for the virtual environment for kind of running the backend code. And when you want to run your code using UV, you can use the UV run and then the name of your Python file, so something like main.py, to make sure that you're using this virtual environment. You don't need to activate the virtual environment. You can just run it like this. Okay, so from PyCharm, I'm just going to change my interpreter location. So I'm going to go to interpreter settings. So I'm going to go add interpreter, add local interpreter. I'm going to select an existing interpreter, and I'm going to select the one in this directory. Now, it's not really showing it to me very nicely here. So let's go to this. Let's go to desktop. Let's find our app, which is this backend. Let's go to venv. We're going to go into our scripts, and we're going to find python.exe and press on OK, and then press on OK, press on apply, press on OK again, and now we've selected the correct interpreter. Okay, so from our backend directory, I know there's a lot of setup here, just bear with me because this is a large project. We're going to make a few new folders. So we're going to go new folder, and the first folder that we're going to have here is going to be our src folder, where we're going to store all of the source code for this project. Okay, then we're going to have another folder inside of here. This is going to be called database. Then we're going to have another folder. This is going to be called routes or roots, however you want to say it. And I think for now, that's actually it. And then we'll add some stuff later on. Okay, so that is kind of stubbing or templating our backend. And in case you get lost in this video, all of the code will be available from GitHub in the description. Okay, so now that we've created the backend, we're going to go ahead and create the front end, and then we'll start setting some things up. So what I'm going to do is type cd ... Okay, this is going to bring me now into my root directory, and I'm going to use a command to generate the front end. Since we're working with React, we're going to use the npm command, which means that you need to have Node.js installed on your system. So if you don't already have Node.js, you can go to Node.js on Google here, you can just pop it up, and it will tell you how to download it. Okay, so from here, the command that we're going to run is the following. This is going to be npm, okay, so let's type that correctly, create, and then vite at latest, like that. And then we're going to call this front end, and we're going to say dash dash, and then dash dash template, and then React, okay? We're going to hit enter. That's going to take a second. We're going to type yes and hit enter, and it should create that directory for us. Okay, perfect. So let's just refresh here, and you can see front end pops up. So we're going to cd into the front end directory, and similarly to before, we're going to install some of the dependencies that we need. So we're going to type npm install, and we're going to install the React router and then DOM at 6. Okay, so the v6 version of this, we're going to use that for routing. And we're going to install the @clerk/clerk-react package. Okay, so we need this for handling the Clerk authentication because Clerk has some built-in components that allow us to do the auth very easily. So we're going to install all of that, wait for that to finish, and I'll be right back. All right, so everything has been installed here, and now we have our front-end directory, we have our back-end directory, and we're good to continue with the rest of the setup. So now that we've done this, we're going to go to our web browser actually, and we're going to create a new project here on Clerk. Okay, so we're going to go to the Clerk website. You can simply just go to clerk.com. I will leave this link in the description. And if you don't already have an account, you can make one. Once you make the account, you should be able to go to your dashboard. Again, this is entirely free. You don't need a credit card or anything. And what we're going to do is make a new project. Now for me, I'm going to do that by clicking up here and clicking on create application, but you should see a prompt somewhere if this is a new account to make that new app. So we're going to go create application, and for the application, we'll give it a name. So I'm going to say YT tutorial challenge or something. Like, you don't need to do the dashes, you could do like this, okay? And obviously whatever you put as the name is what will show up under the kind of Clerk sign-in window. All right, so now from here, you can choose the sign-in methods that you want to allow. So notice there's a lot. Like, you can use a crypto one, you can use Line, Notion, Hugging Face, Discord. Like, they have all kinds of providers, and you can use multiple. So you can tick, like, you know, all these different options if you want, and use those. Now, I think if you go up to too many, then you need to upgrade your plan. But for most people, I think 3 providers is going to be plenty. So I'm going to disable email, and I'm just going to go with Google because this is probably the most convenient for most people, and it doesn't require us to really do any setup at all. Okay, so I'm going to go to create application here, and we'll just wait 1 second, and you see that the app has now been created. Now, Clerk obviously works with all kinds of different stacks, so you don't just need to use this with React, but you're going to notice that all of the stuff it's showing you here is mostly the front-end stacks, okay? So when you want it connected with the back-end, there's a little bit more setup, which is why I'm making this video, and I'm going to show it to you in a sec. But for now, we're just going to go to React, okay? Now, from here, it kind of gives you the steps. We've already done some of these, so you need to install the Clerk/Clerk React package, and then it tells us that we need to add a few of these things to our project. So we're just going to follow the steps that it has right here. We're going to make a new .env file, and we're going to copy this right here, which is our publishable key, which allows us to connect to our Clerk project. So we're going to go back to PyCharm. We're going to go to our front end. We're going to make a new file. This is going to be a .env file for storing environment variables or credentials. And we're going to paste inside of here that variable that we just found, and we'll just save the file. Okay, let's go back and click see the next steps. Okay, so for the next steps here, it says that we can import the publishable key like this and just throw an error if we don't see it. So let's go ahead and do that by just copying this into our main.jsx file. Okay, so if we go to src, we should see a main.jsx. Okay, inside of here, we can just bring in this import, and this will just make sure that we have the publishable key so the app works. Let's go back, let's follow the next step, and let's make this a bit larger. And you can see here that it says that we need to add the Clerk provider to our application. Now I'm going to do this a little bit differently than you're seeing here. This step obviously would work, but I just want to make the app a little bit cleaner in terms of the code that we're going to have. So I'm not going to copy this exactly. But essentially what we need to do in our React application is we need to wrap the application in this Clerk provider. And once this is wrapped, then we're able to access all of our Clerk hooks and all of the Clerk information related to if a user signed in or signed out. So for example, once you do that, we can then use these pre-built components from Clerk. So like this signed out component or this signed in component. And if we are signed out, then it's going to render this. If we're signed in, then it's going to render this. Okay. So let's go back here to React and let's start following kind of my steps here, which are going to be a little bit different. So we're just going to leave the main.jsx application as it is. It actually will take this import and we're going to put this in a different file. I just remembered. So we're going to go into our app.jsx file here, and we're just going to start cleaning this file up a little bit because it has a bunch of things that we don't need. So we're going to remove the imports up here for the logos because we don't need those. And we can pretty much just get rid of everything that's inside of this component. And for now, we can just return a fragment, which is just this, okay? Kind of this empty tag. Now that we have that, what we're going to do is just delete the assets that we don't need here. So I'm just going to delete this. I'm going to go into src. I'm going to make a new folder. So let's go new directory here. And I'm just going to call this auth. And inside of this folder, I'm going to make some really small components that will allow us to handle all of the authentication really modular. So I'm going to make a new file inside of here. Okay, and I'm just going to call this the clerk provider with and then routes. Okay, and I'm going to call this, I'm going to add the extension .jsx. Okay, it's important to have that so that this will be a valid React component. Now from here, I'm going to paste in this, which will allow us to import the kind of clerk publishable key. And at the top, I'm going to bring in my imports. So I'm going to say import the clerk provider from, and then this is going to be at clerk/clerk React. I am then going to import the browser router, okay, from React router DOM. This is because I'm going to start setting up some routing as well. So we need to wrap our application in the clerk provider as well as this browser router so that we can have kind of dynamic navigation happening in our pages. Now, this is kind of scary how good this autocomplete is because that's actually exactly what I want. So I'm just going to go ahead and press enter there. It's kind of scary what's happening recently with all of the autocomplete. But you can see that we have this export, default, function, clerk provider with routes, that's what I'm calling it. We're going to take in the children, which is just all of the components that are kind of wrapped in this clerk provider with routes. We are going to then wrap everything here with our clerk provider, and we're going to pass not this front-end API, but our publishable key. So this is the one thing that we need to change. It's called publishable key. This will be equal to the publishable key that we have kind of brought in here as a variable. This is loading it from our environment variable file. And then we are going to put our browser router and we're going to put everything else inside of here. Okay, so that is our clerk provider with routes. Now we're going to use that from our app.jsx component. So we're going to go back to app here, and inside of app, we're going to import that component that we just wrote. So we're going to say import the clerk provider with routes. Okay. And this is going to be from, and then this will be /, and what are we calling this here? It's going to be auth / clerk provider with routes.jsx. All right, so from our app component here, we're now going to use this clerk provider with routes. So we're going to render the clerk provider with routes, and we're going to close this tag. Now we're just going to put our entire application inside of here so that we're able to access all of the clerk stuff and we're able to have dynamic kind of routing or page navigation. So React Router DOM allows us to essentially go to various / routes. So we can go to like /home or /login or whatever all of these different ones are. So that's why we need that. And that's why I kind of built this simple component. So inside of here, or up here, I guess, in my imports, I'm going to import a few things that we need. So I'm just going to import the routes, okay, and the route from, and this is going to be the React Router DOM. So let's spell that correctly. Okay, so from here, we're just going to write routes. So let's spell this correctly as a component. And inside of here, we can put all of our different routes that we want to have for the application, where we're specifying like, okay, if you go to /home, we want to go here. If you go to /signin, we want to go here, etc., etc. Okay, so in order to have the routes, we need to know what components we want to render when a user goes to a particular page. So right now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stub out all of the different components. We're not going to write all of them, but we'll just create the different files so that we can put them inside of here and test them and run our application. So I'm going to go to my SRC folder. I'm going to make a new directory here, and I'm going to call this challenge. Okay, this is where we'll put all of this stuff related to our challenge code. Then I'm going to do another directory, and I'm going to call this history. Pretty straightforward, but this is where we'll have the history components. I'm going to make another directory. This is going to be called layout. Okay, so this is just a general component that we'll have for laying out the site. And then I'm going to have another new directory, and we're going to call this utils. And this is where we'll have some utility code for interacting with our API. Okay, so let's spell challenge correctly because I just realized this is challenge, not challenge. So let's fix that. And let's start making these components. So inside of challenge, we're going to have a new file, and this is going to be called the challenge generator.jsx. So we can say export function challenge generator, and then inside of here, we can just return a fragment. And then just to make sure that this works, we're just going to go import, and then we're going to import React up here because sometimes you get an error if you don't import React or you have no imports in these files. Okay, so I'm going to copy this code, and we're just going to go to make our next components. So we're going to have another new file inside of challenge, and this is going to be the MCQ challenge, okay, .jsx. This is going to be a component that we use for rendering all of those kind of multiple choice questions that you saw in the demo. And we'll just change the name of this to be the MCQ challenge like that. Okay, so that's the name of our component. Then we're going to go to history, and we're going to make a new file here. Now for history, we're just going to call this the history panel, okay, .jsx. Same thing, we'll paste this in, and we'll just call this the history panel. Then we're going to go to layout, and from layout, we're going to make a new file, and we're just going to call this layout.jsx. Same thing, let's just call this layout, okay, like that. Then we're going to go to utils. We're going to make a new file. For utils, we're going to call this api.js. Notice it's not JSX, it's just JS because this is just a JavaScript file. And then lastly, we're going to go back into Auth, and we're going to make a page here or a file called Authentication, okay, page.jsx. Same thing, we're going to paste this in here, and we're going to call this the authentication page. Okay, so all of the components have been created now. I'm just going to close all of these, and I'm going to go back to my app.jsx. So now that we've created the components, we can import them and we can start setting up the routes, and then I can show you actually testing the application. Again, I know there's a lot of setup, but this is just what happens when you build a large application. All right, so below here, we are going to start importing a few things in here, and we are going to say import, and we can start with layout. So we're going to import layout from our not./components, but from our layout/layout.jsx. Okay. Then we are going to import the challenge generator from challenge generator.jsx. Okay, then we are going to import the history panel. Don't worry if it's going gray, it's just because we haven't used the import right now, so that's why it's doing that. Then we are going to import the authentication page. Okay, so authentication page from auth/authentication page. I think that's all that we need for right now, so just make sure that you have these imports. And again, feel free to pause the video, slow down the playback speed, or check out all of the code from the GitHub link in the description in case I'm going too fast for you. All right, so inside of our routes here, we're going to create a few different routes. Now, the way that you make a route is the following. You say route, you put a path. So in this case, we're going to start setting up our authentication routes. So I'm going to go /sign and then in / and then an asterisk. When you put the asterisk here, this is a pattern match. What this means is that if you go to any page that starts with /sign-in and ends in anything, then we'll redirect to this page, because sometimes we'll have some other parameters in this URL. So we want to make sure that we handle those. Then we're going to say element, and we're going to say, okay, if we're going to the sign-in page, then we're going to go and redirect us to the authentication page. Okay, and let's just make sure that all of this is written correctly. So we're saying if you go to sign in, then we want to render this page. So we'll render the authentication page. Now we're just going to copy this, paste it down here, and we're just going to do sign up. And for sign up, we're going to go to the same thing, except we don't need the pattern match this time. So if someone wants to sign up, we'll just bring them to the authentication page as well. And Clerk will automatically handle showing them the correct page. So sign up, sign in, etc. Okay, now we're going to make a route. Okay, and this is going to be a little bit different. This time we're actually going to have kind of the enclosing tags. So the opening tag and the closing tag. And from here, we're going to say element is equal to, and we're going to render a layout. Now, all this means is that everything inside of this route right here is going to be rendered inside of this layout component. So we can have kind of this uniform layout for our entire website, and then all these other pages just show up inside of that layout. That's what we're doing here when we set up these routes. So we're going to have our first route. We're going to say the path is equal to, and we're just going to do a /. Okay, and the element is going to be equal to the challenge generator. Okay, sorry about the autocomplete, guys. Then we're going to have another route, and you can see again my autocomplete is really good. So it's saying, okay, if you go to /history, then of course we want to show the history panel. Okay, and actually with that, that should complete this first page. Now we have this kind of use state up here that I forgot to remove, so let's just get rid of that, and now we can save. Okay, so at this point now we have all of the routing set up. We have our Clerk kind of authentication running, or at least configured in this application. But what I want to do is I just want to set up the authentication page correctly so that we can actually see some of the kind of Clerk forms. Okay, so from our authentication page here, we're going to go to import, and we're going to import sign in. We're going to import sign up. We're going to import signed in and signed out from, and this is going to be at Clerk/Clerk React. Okay, so these are built-in components that Clerk gives us that allows us to render these different fields. All right, so from now, we're going to return a div. This div is going to have a class name, which is equal to the auth-container, because, well, that's what it is. And then we're going to do the following. So we're going to say signed out. All right, so if someone is signed out, then we want to display whatever's inside of here. Then we're going to have signed in. So if someone is signed in, well, then we want to show what's here. So this is literally how easy it is to determine, is someone signed in, is someone signed out? Clerk will do it for us automatically because we have the package, and then we can just handle rendering what we want. So if someone is signed out, then what we want to do is we want to show them two things. We're going to show them the sign in. So we're going to say routing is equal to path, and we're going to say the path is equal to, and this is going to be /sign in. Okay, and then we are going to do the same thing but with sign up. So what this pretty much means is, hey, if we're on the sign in page, then show us this sign in field. If we're on the sign up page, then show us this sign up field. Okay, that's it. So we just have sign in and sign up. Then we're going to go to the signed in. So I'm saying this a lot. We're going to make a simple div, and we're just going to say class name is equal to, and this is going to be a redirect message. Okay, and inside of this div, we're just going to put a paragraph tag and say you are already signed in. Just because if for some reason they hit this authentication page and they're already signed in, there's not really anything that they need to do. So we'll just tell them, hey, you're already signed in. Okay, so that is the authentication page. That's literally all that we need. And now we can test our application, and we should be able to see the Clerk sign in and sign out working. We don't have things in the navbar yet, so we might not see it exactly, but at least if we go to the sign in page, we should be able to see that. So let's go to npm run dev in our front end. That is going to run the development server for us. So we're going to run that, and it's giving me an error. So it says that there's some import that it can't resolve. So let me just see, I probably spelled something wrong, so give me 1 second. Okay, so silly mistake here, but I actually exported this as a default component, and then in here, I'm trying to import it as a named component. So what I'm gonna do is, I'm just gonna remove the braces from around this, and then save, and then we should be good to go now if we restart this. So actually, let's get out of main. Let's terminate this, and let's rerun, and now you can see that this is working, and you can see it's running on this port here, 5174. Okay, so from here, we're not seeing anything just because we haven't gone to any of our routes. So for example, / is bringing us here, but if we go to something like dash or /sign in, for example, you see that it actually brings us to this Clerk authentication page. And then if I go to something like sign up, you can see brings us here, and now it says create your account. Okay, so that means it's working. The component is showing up. Now what we want to do is style the site a little bit, and we want to add a bit of a nav bar so that we can see if we're signed in or not. So let's move on to that next step. All right, so let's go to our layout page here. So layout.jsx, and inside of layout, what we're gonna do is we're gonna build this kind of uniform layout that will show up everywhere on our website. Now this is gonna be something like a nav bar, right? That's pretty much what we need. So let's start building that out. So we're gonna go to the top here, and we're just gonna say import, and we're gonna import the signed in component, the signed out component, and the user button. Okay, the user button is something that you can press on to kind of see your profile, and that would allow you to sign out. Now we're going to import this from again Clerk/Clerk React, and then we are going to say import, and we're going to import an outlet, a link, and a navigate here. Okay, and this is going to be from, and then this is React router dot. Okay, so we need that because we're going to have like a basic nav bar in this layout, and these components allow us to change between the different pages that we have. So from here, we're going to make a div. Now you're going to notice from now on, I'm going to start having some different class names that we're going to use for some CSS styling. Now I'm not going to write all of the CSS in this video because it's like a few hundred lines of code and it just doesn't make a lot of sense for these tutorials. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy it in and I'm going to give you a link. You'll see it in the description. You can just find it in the GitHub where you can find all of the CSS for this project and you can just paste it in the CSS file and then everything will just look as it's supposed to look. So we'll get to that in one sec, but I just want to make you aware of that. So we're going to say class name is equal to, and then this is going to be the app layout. Okay, we're going to make a header. For the header, we're going to have the class name equal to, and then this is going to be the app header. Then we're going to have a div. For the div, we're going to have class name equal to header dash content. And then here we're going to have kind of like the name of our site. So I'm going to call this the code challenge generator, like that. Then I'm going to have a nav component, and inside of the nav component I'm going to say, okay, if we're signed in, then what we want to show is the following. So we're going to close this signed in component. So only if we're signed in, then what we're going to do is this. We're going to have a link. Okay, so this is like a nav link. For the link, we're going to say this is going to, and then this is going to be to and just slash. So just going to go to the home page where we'll show the challenge. And then actually we can close this link component, and sorry, let's close this here. And inside of here, we're just going to write generate challenge. Okay. Now I'm not sure why it's giving me an error. Oh, it's because I put this on the wrong side. So we have link, close the link, going to slash. This is called generate challenge. Let's copy this. Let's paste another one. This time I'm going to go to history. Let's spell that correctly. And then this will just be named history. Perfect. Okay, so that is our header. And then actually beneath here, I don't want to forget this, we're going to add the user button. So the user should be able to see their profile and they should be able to sign out. So we're just going to put user button here, and then Clerk will automatically handle showing all of their details, which again is why I love using Clerk for the authentication. Okay, now beneath the header, which is kind of going to be the nav bar, we're going to have our main content. For main, we're going to say class name is equal to app-main. And then we're going to have our signed out. Okay, so if you're signed out, then what we're going to do is we're just going to navigate you directly to the sign in page. Okay, so we're going to go to sign in. Let's go like this, and we're going to add replace. So what this says is, okay, if the user is signed out, we're just going to directly navigate them to sign in, and the replace just means replace them in the current window so that it doesn't change the tab. Okay, then we're going to have signed out, or sorry, not signed out, we're going to have signed in. Okay, and then for signed in, we're going to have an outlet. And what outlet means is we're just going to take whatever was passed to the layout component, and we're just going to put it right here. So if you look at app.jsx, you can see that we have layout here, and we're going to have these different routes that are rendered kind of inside of the layout. So when you put outlet, you just mean, okay, whatever this is, so whatever these components are, put them here inside of the outlet. That's how the layout works. So now that we have the layout, this should be working. If we go back to the site and we refresh here, we should see the nav bar if we go to just the home page. And it kind of popped up there for a second, but then went away. So what we'll do is we'll just copy in the CSS just to make sure that this actually is going to appear properly, and then we can go from there. So I'm just going to go to app.css, and I'm just going to remove everything that's inside of here, and I'm just going to copy in this other file. Okay, now notice it's like 300 lines of code. Now this file is called app.css. It's in this exact same location, and you can find it from the GitHub link in the description. So if you go down there, you'll see GitHub. It says like code in this video. You can open it up and you can either download the whole thing, or you can just navigate the file structure. So you can go into Frontend, you can go into src, you can go into app.css, you'll see this exact same file, and you can copy it and just put it to your file locally. Okay, so we're going to save that. We're going to go back, and now you can see that this is loading. Now, I believe that I also need to have some CSS for the index.css file because this is probably messing it up as well. So we're going to do the same thing here, and I'm just going to copy in the index.css file. So again, rather than app.css, just replace the index.css with the one that's down below. Now, when we look at this, it looks much better. And if I do sign in, then we should be brought to the home page where we will see the nav bar. So let's actually try that right now. We're going to go to continue with Google, and we're just going to attempt to do the sign in. So from here, I'll pick one of my Google accounts, which I do need to blur out. Okay, so let's sign in. Let's select this one. It might ask us for permission or something, so we'll go ahead and click on continue. We'll take a second to load because it's the first time, and then it should bring us to that homepage. And there you go. You can see that now we've signed in, and you can see that if we look at this little button up here, it shows us our profile. We can manage our account by pressing this right here, and we are good to go. And then we can sign out by pressing the sign out button. So if we do press sign out, then it will sign us out and bring us back to the sign in page. That is the beauty of Clerk. The authentication on the front end is literally now done. And the next step is that we need to just configure some Clerk settings because we can change how this looks and the behavior of Clerk. So let me show you how that works. All right, so if we go to the Clerk site here and we go to our project, you can see that I've kind of selected it right here. First of all, it's telling me congrats, your application has users, and it's telling me that we can configure the app. So there's a lot of stuff that we can do here within Clerk. So let's go to configure application. And first of all, you'll see that if we're on this page right here where it says email, phone, username, we're able to add various other features for the account. So if we wanted the user to have to give us their first name and last name, then what we can do is we can tick this and we can require the first and last name. And that means when they're signing up, we'll get that information. For example, we can enable a username. So maybe I'll do this and I'll just enable the username and require this during sign up and allow the user to sign in with their username as well. So we can go on save and we've just added that. Same thing, allow users to delete their accounts. There's a bunch of settings here that you can configure. Now for sign in, we can't change that because what we did here, that's okay. And then we have all kinds of other connections. So for example, if we wanted to add something other than Google, we could do that, right? If we want to add Web3, we can do that. If we want to have various restrictions on who can sign in, we can actually make this a wait list. So we can say, okay, signups are disabled, but they can join a wait list, and then we can send them an email or something later when they are able to sign in. We also can give specific access, so we can allow a specific domain, for example, like everyone at techwithtim.net is able to sign in. There's a block list. There's a lot of stuff here in Clerk. I obviously can't go over everything. Now, what I do want to do is go back to the overview here, and I want to configure some of the UI components. So it says Clerk UI components. So from here, we can go to configure, and it will allow us to actually change what the components look like and show us a bunch of the other components we can use. So we have all these different components, many of which we've actually used. You can see these ones are unstyled, right? Like the sign out button, sign in button, etc. And then we can customize them using the appearance property. Now, actually, I don't want to dive too deep into this because it's going to take a second if we start customizing all of the components. But from this page, which again, you can just find from the Clerk site very easily, if you do want to make changes to, for example, this form or something, you want to remove this, you want to change how it looks or whatever, you can do that, right? You don't need to stick with these default components. There's also a bunch of other things here. For example, you can enable webhooks, which we're going to do later on. So when someone signs in, it will send a request to our backend and tell them, hey, like a new user was just created in case there's any setup steps that we want to run for that. Subscriptions, organizations, you guys get the idea. I'm not going to go through everything. That is kind of the basic gist on Clerk. Just wanted to show that to you because obviously if you're using it for Auth, well, you should probably be aware of those configuration options. Okay, so let's just sign back in to one of the accounts that we created. So I'll go with this one right here. And okay, we are now on the site. By the way, if I click on this now and I go to manage account, you can see there's a username. So I can set my username like, Tech with Tim or something and press on save. Okay, so let's get out of that. Let's go back to our front end and let's start writing some more code. Now, what we'll do for now is we'll just write a few more front end components. Then we're going to go to the back end, which is going to do a lot of the heavy lifting for this application. And then we'll connect the two together. So we're going to go to where should we go here? Let's go to challenge. Let's go to challenge generator. And I want to start writing the form that will allow the user to generate one of those unique challenges. Now, not all of this code we can write yet because we don't have the back end, but I'll kind of stub it out and get it ready for when we do. So we're going to start up here by saying import use state and use effect from React. We're then going to import that multiple choice question. So the multiple choice challenge, that we had. And there's one more thing that we need to import, but we haven't written that code yet. So we'll do that later. Okay, now inside of here where we have the challenge, let's start writing a few things. So we're going to go up here and we're going to start setting some of the state that we need. So we're going to say const challenge and then set challenge is equal to use state and then null. Because the challenge the user generates, we need to store on this page, so we'll have some state for that. Then we're going to have const, and we're going to have loading, and then set is loading. Okay, so let's do this. And this actually will just be called is loading. Because obviously when we send the request, it's going to take a second to get the result. So we want to have this loading indicator. And for now, we're going to make this false. Then we're going to have const, and we're going to have error, and then set error, and we'll say use state, again, null. Then we're going to have const, and this is going to be difficulty. Okay, and then set difficulty, and this will be use state null. Then we're going to have the quota. So const quota, and then set quota, and then again, this will be use state null. And actually, for the difficulty, let's change this quickly. Rather than null, we're just going to keep it by default at easy. And you can add a bunch of other stuff here as well. You don't just have to have the ones that I'm setting, but again, I'm giving you kind of a base template that you can then adjust later on. Okay, so now that we have this, we're going to start writing a few functions that we'll need. So we're going to say const fetch quota. Okay, so we need to see how many challenge generation tokens or credits or whatever this user currently has, because obviously since we're using an LLM, we don't want every user to be able to spam our LLM and run up our kind of API bill. So we're going to have kind of a limit on the number of times that they can use it. Now I'm going to make this an async function. So we're just going to say async like that. And for now, we're not going to do anything inside that function. We'll write it later on. Then we're going to have a const generate challenge. Same thing. This is going to be an async function. Again, we'll implement the function later. We're just kind of getting them ready. Then we're going to have a const get next reset time. Okay, this is going to be equal to a normal function. And inside of here, we're going to determine how long until the user gets more credits, because every 24 hours we'll give the users more credits. All right, so now we're going to start rendering the form. So we're going to have a div. We're going to have the class name, which will be equal to the challenge container. We're then going to have an h2. This is going to say coding challenge generator. You can call it whatever you want. Then we're going to have a few divs. Now the first div is just going to display the user's current quota. So it's going to say like you have 2 challenges left, 3 challenges left, whatever the value is. So we're going to have a class name, and this is going to be equal to the quota display. Okay, again, all this CSS is already written. You would have copied it in. We're going to have a paragraph tag, and we're going to say the challenges remaining today. And then for now, we're going to put in a variable, and we're going to say quota question mark, okay, to check if this value is populated yet or not. And then it's going to be dot quota underscore remaining or 0. So pretty much what this is saying is, all right, do we have the quota yet? Have we pulled it from the backend? If we haven't, then we'll just show 0. If we have, then we'll show whatever the quota, and this needs to be quota, not quote, remaining is. Okay, then we're going to have kind of a dynamic variable here, and we're going to say quota question mark dot, and again, this is going to be quota remaining, and we're going to say if this is equal to 0, then we want to show them when they get more credits. Okay, so inside of here, we're going to put a set of parentheses. In the parentheses, we're going to put a paragraph tag, and we're going to say the next reset is, and then we'll put a value here in 1 second. For now, I'm just going to put 0 because we don't have the variable that we can use yet to put in here. But we're just going to put essentially the date and time in which they'd get more credits. So that's the quota display. Now beneath the quota display, we're going to have the difficulty selector. So we're going to allow them to choose what difficulty they want. So we're going to say div class name is equal to difficulty selector like that. Okay. Inside of this div, we're going to have a label. Okay. The label is going to say select difficulty, and we're just going to use this called HTML4. And we're going to specify the class that this is for, which is difficulty, or sorry, the ID of the component this is for, which we're going to write right now. Now beneath here, we're going to have a select field. Okay, for the select field, we're going to have the ID is equal to difficulty. We're going to have the value equal to the difficulty that we have in our state. We're going to have an onChange function. The onChange function is going to have E, which is the event, and then this is going to be set difficulty. Okay, and then for set difficulty, we're going to say E dot target dot value, and I'm just going to format this. So 1 second. Okay, so after the on change, we're just going to have a disabled, and this is going to be equal to is loading. So if we're loading, we're not going to allow the user to select something. If we're not, then they can select. Okay, so we have our different values here that we need for the select field. In fact, we can move these down actually and just bring these in so the formatting is more proper. And then what we're going to do is we're going to specify the options in the select field, okay? So the options are pretty easy. In fact, my autocomplete is literally doing them for me. So let's see if we can get it to go. Okay, option easy, medium, hard. Okay, these are the options that we want. So we want easy, medium, hard, and then just make sure the values are hard, medium, and easy with the lowercase letters, okay? You can make it uppercase if you want, but then you're gonna have to change something in the back end. So for right now, let's just make them lowercase to make it a little bit easier. All right, so that is our difficulty selector. Now below our difficulty selector, we're just gonna have the button that allows you to generate the challenge. So we're gonna say button, okay? And for the button, we will just put the text that says is loading question mark. So we're gonna say is loading and then question mark, and we'll say generating dot dot dot. So if it's loading, we'll show that on the button. Otherwise, we'll say generate challenge. For the button, we're gonna have a few values that we'll put here. So we're gonna say the on click is equal to generate challenge. We're gonna say the disabled is equal to, and this is gonna be is loading, or the quota question mark dot quota, okay, underscore remaining is equal to 0, because if you don't have any quota remaining, we shouldn't allow you to press this button. And then we're gonna have the class name is equal to the generate button. Okay, and let me just again format this a little bit so it looks a bit nicer. Okay, so that's our button, almost done here. Lower, we're gonna put the error. So if there's an error, we're gonna say error, and then we're gonna have the class name error message, and we will display the error inside of this p tag. Okay, actually, we're gonna change this a little bit. This is gonna be a div, and then here will be a p tag, and here will be a p tag. And again, we can kind of fix the formatting a little bit so it looks a bit more proper. So there we go. All right, so we're gonna display the error inside of paragraph tag, inside of this div if we have an error. All right, otherwise, we're gonna have challenge and then we're gonna show the multiple choice challenge. Again, we're gonna pass to this the challenge that we generated. Now I know not all of this code is fully finished, so it might not make 100% sense, but this is the overall component that we're gonna have for displaying this form. So for right now, let's actually go and look at our front end and see what it looks like. And you can see that right now we have challenges remaining 0. We have the difficulty selector that we can go with, and then we can press this button. However, obviously when we press it right now, it doesn't do anything. All right, so now that this form is done, let's continue. And I want to write a few other components of the front end. Now, again, we can't really finish this until the back end is done, but I don't want to keep jumping between the different things because it gets a bit confusing. So let's do most of the front end. We'll do everything that we can, and then we'll go over to the back end and it will all start to make a lot more sense. So let's go to our multiple choice challenge component. Now this is going to represent one individual question. And the reason why we're writing this as a component is because we're going to show multiple questions in different places, right? So for example, when you generate a question, we'll show this component so we can show what the question looks like. But then on our history page, we'll show all of the questions that the user has generated in the past. So this will be a nice reusable component that just displays one individual question. Now the question is going to be in kind of a JSON format, and we're going to have, I think, something like the content, which will be like, this question is whatever, like, what is the function in Python for printing something, right? Like that would be the type of question. And then we would have a few other things as well. Like we have the options, which are the multiple choice options. We're going to have the correct answer. You'll get the idea, which will be an index which within this array. So for example, if we had 1, 2, 3, 4 and the correct answer is 0, that means it's this option, right? The first option, index 0. And then we're going to have an explanation as well, which will explain why this is the correct answer. Okay, so let's import what we need. So we're going to import useState from React. And then for our question, we're going to take in the challenge, okay? And then we're going to have show explanation, and this is going to be equal to false by default. So let's do an equal sign here, actually. Okay, so we have that. Now what we're going to do is just set some state. So we're going to go up here and we're going to say const, and this is going to be selected option, and then set selected option, and this is going to be use state and then null. And then we're going to have const, and this is going to be show explanation, and we're actually going to go should show explanation. And then for the next one, this is going to be set should show explanation, and this is going to be equal to use state and then show explanation, and this needs to be a capital. Okay, and let's make this a little bit bigger so that we can read this. So essentially what we're saying is, all right, we're going to take in the actual challenge, which is the content of the challenge. We're also going to take in if we should show the explanation by default or not. We're going to set these two pieces of state, one for representing the selected option the user pressed on, and then we are going to have this state here that tells us if we should show the explanation or not, because we can change that dynamically based on if the user's interacted with the question or not. Now, next thing, we're going to say const options is equal to, and we're just going to check something. So we're going to say the type of challenge.options equals string. Okay, so we're going to check if that's the case. If it is type string, then what we're going to do is say JSON dot parse, and we're going to parse the challenge dot options. Otherwise, we're going to say challenge dot options. The reason for this is that we want to have our options in a JSON format. So we're going to look at the options. We're going to say, okay, are they a string? If they are a string, we're going to convert them to JSON. Otherwise, we're just going to take the existing options. Okay, then we're going to have a function. This is going to say handle option and then select. Now, this is just going to be a normal function that takes in the index of the option that we pressed on. And what we're going to do is the following. We're going to say if the selected option, and sorry about this autocomplete, it can be a little bit annoying here. If the selected option does not equal to null, then what we're going to do is return, because we're not going to let the user select another option if they've already selected one. Then we're going to say set the selected option to the index. So if the selected option currently is null, then we set this to the index that they pressed on. And then we're going to say set show explanation to true. So once they've selected one of the options, then they've made their choice. So we can show them whether it's correct or not and show the explanation. Okay. Then what we're going to do is we're going to have a function called const, and this is going to be get option class. Now, the idea is that we want to style the various options and show them as either red or green. So when the user presses or selects what they think the correct answer is for this multiple choice question, we're then going to show the correct options. So we're going to say, okay, if it's correct, we're going to show it in green. If it's incorrect, we're going to show it in red. So that's what this function is going to do for us. It's going to take an index of one of the options. It's going to check if it's correct or not. If it's correct, it's going to return the class name we use for correct. If it's not, then it gives us the class name for incorrect. So we're going to say if the selected option is equal to null, then we're just going to return, okay, and then option. Okay, this is just the default class name. Otherwise, we're going to say if the index is equal to the challenge.correct underscore answer underscore ID, then we are going to return. And why are we getting an error here? Okay, it's all good. We're going to return option and correct. Okay, and then we're going to say if the selected option is equal to the index and the index does not equal, and then we're going to say challenge.correct underscore answer ID. Then what we're going to do here is return, and then this is going to be option incorrect. And then otherwise, we're going to return option. Okay, so basically what we're doing is we're saying, all right, we want to get the class name that we need. So if we have not selected any options, then we can just return option because, well, we don't have anything correct or incorrect because they haven't selected yet. If the index is equal to the correct answer ID, then that means it's correct. So we will return it. And if the selected option is equal to this index and the index does not equal the correct answer ID, then what we're going to do is return option incorrect, because what that's telling us is the user selected something incorrect, so we're going to highlight this is incorrect. Otherwise, we're going to return option. I know it's a little bit confusing, but essentially this handles highlighting it red or green based on what the correct answer is and what the user selected. Okay, so let's go down here. We're going to render a div. We're going to say the class name is equal to the challenge display. And then inside of this div here, we're going to put our paragraph tag. we're going to put a strong tag to make this bold. We're going to say difficulty, and then this is going to be equal to the challenge.difficulty, which we'll have in the challenge. All right. Then we're going to show what the title of the challenge is, or kind of like the content. So we're going to have a paragraph tag. We're going to have class name is equal to the challenge and then title. And then we're just going to show the challenge.title. Okay, then we're going to have a div. We're going to have the class name equal to the options because we need to render all of the options. And then what we're going to do is we're going to display them. Now, this is already very good what it's showing me, but let's just write it from scratch. So let's say options.map. And what we're going to do is we're going to map the option and the index. Okay, and then what we're going to have is the following. So we're going to have a set of parentheses. And inside of here, we're going to have a div. Okay, let's close the div. For the div, we're going to have the class name, which is equal to get option class, and we're going to pass in our index. Okay, so we're going to call this function and get the class name that we should be using, whether it's correct or incorrect. Let me just put this down one line so that it is better formatted. Then we're going to have our key. The key is just going to be equal to the index because it needs to be unique. And then we're going to have the onClick, which is going to be the following, where we're going to have a function and we're going to say handle option select and then the index. Okay, so that is our div. And then inside of here, we can just render whatever the option is, which should just be some text. All right, so that is the div for our options. Now beneath here, we're going to show the explanation. So we're going to say if show explanation and the selected option does not equal null. Then we're going to have our and. We're going to have a set of parentheses. We're going to have a div. The class name here is going to be explanation. Okay, we can close the div, so let's close that up. And then inside of the div here, we're going to have an h4, and we're going to say explanation, and then we'll have a paragraph tag, and we will say that this is challenge.explanation. Okay, and actually with that, that's going to wrap it up. I just want to fix one thing here because this should show explanation, not show explanation. Okay, so let's fix that right here. So now this is correct. Okay, perfect. So that is our multiple choice challenge component. Now that that is done, what we can do is we can move on to writing the history component and utilizing this component from there. So let's go to our history component. This is going to be very simple. And then we're almost done the front end and we can go to the back end. Okay, so from here, we're going to import useState and useEffect from, you guessed it, this is React. We then are going to import the multiple choice challenge from this component right here that we wrote, and then we can start writing this. Okay, so inside of the history panel, we're going to have const history, okay, and then set history, and this is going to be an empty array for right now because this is going to have all of the questions that this user has generated. Then we're going to have const, and this is loading, and then set is loading, okay, and this can be equal to useState, and by default it will be true because it's going to take a second to load this when we first boot this up. And then we're going to have const error set error is equal to useState null. Okay, perfect. Now what we'll do is we'll start writing a few functions. So we're going to say const fetch history. Okay, this is going to be an async function, and what this is going to do is simply fetch the history. And for now, temporarily, I'm just going to say set is loading to false, just so that when we call this function, it stops the component from loading so we can actually view it. Now up here, I'm going to use a useEffect. So this is going to run as soon as the component is rendered. Okay, now for the useEffects, we're going to have an empty dependency array. And then inside of here, we're just going to call fetch history. So essentially what we're doing is saying, okay, as soon as the component mounts on the screen, we want to fetch our history. So it's going to call this function. And for right now, I'm just saying set is loading to false because I don't want to have to wait for something that we're not calling yet to load. And that is that. Okay, and we'll write that function later on. So now down here, we're just going to have a few things. So we're going to say if is loading, then what we're going to do is we're just going to return a div. This div will have a class name, and this can be equal to loading. And we're just going to put some text, and we're just going to say loading history. So let's do that. Loading history ... Okay. Then we're going to have if error. So let's render this here. If we have an error, what we're going to do is return the div with the class name error message, and then we're going to have error inside of a paragraph tag, and then I'm just going to have a button, okay? And what this is going to say is retry, and then we're going to have an on click, and the on click is just going to be equal to the fetch history. So essentially, if there was an error, we'll let the user retry it by pressing this button. It will just fetch the history again, so call this function, which then would update these, set the loading, etc., and allow us to view the component. Okay, we are almost done. We're now just going to return a div down here. We're going to say the class name is equal to the history dash panel. Okay, we're going to have an h2 tag here. We're going to call this history. All right. Then we're going to have the following. We're going to say if the history dot length is equal to 0, then we're going to have a question mark, and we're just going to render a simple paragraph tag, and we're going to say no challenge history. Otherwise, what we're going to do is we're going to render a div. So let's do this if we can spell it correctly. All right, we need to close the div. Now the div is going to have a class name equal to the history dash list, and let's just complete the formatting here and spell challenge correctly. So the way that we can do this to make it work a little bit better is just put this down here. Okay, that's all good. Get rid of that, and then we can write our div. Okay, so then in here we're going to say history.map. We're going to write a function. We're going to take in the challenge, and here we are going to return our multiple choice challenge. We're going to pass the challenge. We're going to pass a key. The key is going to be equal to the challenge.id. And then we're going to say show explanation, and we'll just actually leave it like that, which means it's going to be true. Okay, so that should be good. Again, let's just adjust our formatting here so it's a little bit easier to read. And let's move this down and fix this. And I think we are good to go like that. Okay, perfect. So what we're doing now is we're saying, all right, if we don't have any history, then we're just going to say no challenge history. If we do, then we're just going to have a simple div, and we're just going to render all of the multiple choice challenges for each challenge that we have. That's it. So we're just looping through every single challenge and then just displaying it on the screen. And we're just saying show explanation, which means we are going to show the explanation by default so that we can see kind of what the explanation is, because we've already messed with that question. We don't need to have to interact with it again. If you wanted this to be false, then you could just set it equal to false, of course. Okay. So that is that for the history panel. So that completes pretty much all of the front end. We can quickly go back and test this and make sure that it's working by refreshing and go to, for example, /history. When we go here, it just says no challenge history. Now, of course, we'll see more stuff once we actually connect this to the back end and the generation works, because for right now we don't have that. But in order for that to work, we need to write the back end. So let's go to the back end. We're going to close all of this, and we're going to start writing some code there. Okay, so for our backend, there's quite a few things that we need to do. Now we need to set up our FastAPI application, which is what we're going to start with. And then what we need to have is a few different routes. Now we need to have a route that allows us to generate a challenge. We need to have a route that allows us to get the user's history, and we need to have some kind of setup for handling the authentication. Because the idea is that the backend is going to be what's kind of doing all of the heavy lifting and is going to be the secure component of our application. Because we're going to be connecting this to an LLM, we want to make sure that we kind of defend the backend so that no one can use our LLM API key, because that could cost us a lot of money. And that's one of the main points of this application that we're building. So what will happen is from our front end, we're going to send a unique token that Clerk has generated for us that handles kind of our authentication on the front end to the back end. We're going to check to make sure that token is valid. And if it is, we'll allow the user to use one of their credits and access the kind of challenge generation feature. This is very common. This is what pretty much all of the GPT wrappers are doing. They have some front end, they have some back end. The back end controls the call to the actual LLM so that they can control who can use the LLM, and they can charge people as they use it. Okay, so let's start setting up our backend. We have our database, we have our routes, but of course we need to create a few different files. So inside of SRC, we're going to make some files here. we're going to have a file called AI generator.py. Notice this is just in the root directory of src. We're then going to have another file. This is going to be called app.py. We're going to have another file. This is going to be called utils.py. We're going to have another file. This should be the last one. And this is going to be __init__.py. And I lied. We're going to have one more, which is .env, okay, where we're going to store some credentials and environment variables that we need. Okay, so that completes the src directory, the root of the src directory, but now we're going to go into routes and database and make the files that we need. So for database, we're going to have a new file. This is going to be called db.py. We're going to have another file called models.py. For our routes, we're going to have a file called challenge.py. Okay, we're going to have a webhooks.py, which we'll talk about later on. And we're going to have our __init__.py file, which will make this a Python package. Okay, almost done. So that pretty much wraps up src. Now we just need to make a file in the root of our backend folder called server.py. Okay, this will be the file that we actually run. It'll be kind of the entry point of our application. So let's close all of these and let's start writing the FastAPI application, and then we can add all of the Clerk authentication stuff. So we're going to start inside of the app.py file. And for this, we're going to just set up kind of that base FastAPI application. FastAPI, as it says in the name, is an API framework that allows us to make an API in Python. So we're going to say from FastAPI, import FastAPI with this capitalization, request, and response. Okay. Then we're going to say from fastapi.middleware.cores, we're going to import the cores middleware. Now, what this allows us to do is make sure that our front end can send requests to our back end, because sometimes you'll get this error from the front end saying, hey, like there's this problem, you have this cross-origin resource sharing going on, which isn't allowed. So we need to, on our back end, kind of enable this thing. All right. So you'll see in a second how we do it, but just make sure you have this so that you avoid that error. Then we're going to say from the Clerk _backend_API, we're going to import Clerk. Now, this is actually a package that we installed. So if we go to pyproject.toml, you can see that we have the Clerk SDK Python. And although it's saying it's unresolved, this will work when we run the code using UV. So don't worry about this, that you're getting this error message here. It's okay. I have it on my screen as well. Then we're going to import OS. All right. And what we're going to do is we're going to say our Clerk SDK is equal to Clerk. And we're going to initialize Clerk by passing the bearer_auth equal to os.getEnv. This will get an environment variable for us called the Clerk_secret_key. Now, this is what will be used for us to kind of tell Clerk, hey, like we are the owner of this application because we have this secret key. So we should be able to do all these token operations, which you're going to see later, related to the authentication. Don't worry about it too much right now, but essentially we're just kind of initializing this Clerk client on our backend, which will allow us to interact with Clerk and handle our auth. Again, this error, just ignore it for right now. Okay, then we're going to make a new FastAPI app. So we're going to say app is equal to FastAPI. Okay, I don't know why that's showing up. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to say app dot, and this is going to be add_middleware. Okay, and we're going to add middleware, which is cores. So we're going to add the cores middleware, and then we're going to pass some options related to it. So we're going to say allow origins, and for now we'll make this an asterisk. What this means is we're going to allow anybody to send a request to our backend. If you want to be more secure, then you can specify the exact domain that you want to allow. So you could add, localhost port 5174 or 5173, whatever your React application is on. But for now, I'm just going to do it as an asterisk so that we don't get any errors. Okay, then we're going to say allow credentials equal to true. We're going to say allow methods is equal to asterisk, and allow headers is equal to asterisk as well. And again, we can just clean this up a little bit so it's easier to read. So we'll just put these on a new line like this. So now that the middleware is added, that's pretty much it for right now. Later on, we'll add a few more things to this file, but this is a good enough starting point that we can now go to our server.py file. Okay, so our server.py file is in the root, the app.py is here inside of src, and essentially the server is gonna just run our application. So it's just this basic entry point, okay? So from this file, we're gonna say from src.app import app, and then we're gonna say if __ name is equal to __ main as a string. We're going to import Uvicorn. Now what this is saying right here is if we're running this Python file directly, then we're going to import Uvicorn, which is a web server that allows us to serve our FastAPI application. And we're going to say uvicorn.run, and we're going to say app, and then we're going to say host is equal to this, and port is equal to 8000. Now what this means is just run this on localhost or run this on our local machine. So we're running the application that we imported from this app file on the local computer on localhost, essentially on port 8000. Okay, so we have that now, we can save. And what we're gonna do actually is we're gonna go now into utils, and I'm just gonna write a simple function, which is gonna allow us to authenticate using Clerk. Now I'm gonna bring in some variables. So actually let's do that first so I can explain how this will work, and then we'll start writing the rest of the code. Okay. So we're going to go to Clerk, we're going to go to our dashboard, and we're going to go to where it says secure your app's backend. So I'm going to press on add security. Now here it will bring up the documentation, which you guys can have a look at if you want to see how this actually works. But actually, I lied, we're not going to do that. We're going to go back, we're going to go to configure, and I'm going to find some stuff related to the backend. So what we want to look at here is if we scroll down, we want to look at our API keys. Okay. So from our API key here, what we want to do is we need to take some of these values and we need to bring them in to our application. And the reason for this is that our backend needs these values in order to check if the keys that are passed from our front end are valid or not. So we don't need the front end API URL. What we are going to need, however, is this JWKS public key. Okay, and we're going to need this secret key down here. So let's start by copying the secret key. If you don't have one, you can make a new one. All right, and I'm going to go into my environment variable file, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a variable called clerk secret key, okay? And then I'm going to paste this value. I will delete it afterwards. Obviously, don't share this with anyone. You need this value to be secure. Then we're going to have JWT key is equal to, and we're going to paste inside of here the key that we get from this JWKS public key, all right? So we're going to copy this, and you're going to notice when we paste this in that it appears on multiple lines, okay? So it's fine, it should be on multiple lines, and you need this begin public key and end public key, okay? The entire thing you need, so make sure it looks exactly like this inside of your environment variable file. There are some other variables that we'll bring in later, but for now, these two are enough to make the Clerk authentication work. Okay, so now that we have both of these values, what I want to do is write this utility file. Now, again, I keep saying this because it's really, really important. Essentially, we have the front end, right? Clerk will authenticate us on the front end, and it's going to issue something called a JWT token, which is a JSON web token. Now, this token can then be sent to the backend, and on the backend, which is what we're working on right now, we need to make sure that this token is actually valid. So from the backend, what we're going to do is we're going to connect to Clerk essentially, okay, by using this secret key that we have. And we're going to ask Clerk if the token is valid, okay? Now, there's two ways that we can do this ask. We can do this over the network, which means we actually send a request to Clerk's server, and we say, hey, server, is this token valid? Or the way that I'm going to show you how to do it is networkless. What that means is that there'll be no latency. We don't need to wait for Clerk to respond. And the reason how we can do this networkless is because we have that value that we just brought into our environment variable file, which is this JWT key. So this key and this secret key are enough for us on our backend to be able to look at these Clerk tokens and see if they're valid or not. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense, but in this util file, I'm going to write the code that will do this for us and that we can reuse in our app. So I'm going to say from FastAPI, I'm going to import the HTTP exception, okay? I'm then going to say from the clerk_backend API, and actually I realized that from our app.py, we can just copy this. So we can copy the Clerk backend API, the OS, and we can take it from here and we can actually just put it in utils because we don't need it there. Okay, so I'm going to paste this in. So we have this code right here. And I'm going to bring in one more thing. I'm going to say from.env, import load.env, and I'm going to call this function load.env. Now what this is doing is it's looking for the presence of this environment variable file and it's loading it for us. That's it. It's just going to load it in so that when we try to get this Clerk secret key, we have access to it and we can see it inside this variable. Okay. Then we're going to write a function and we're going to call this authenticate and get underscore user underscore details. Now this is just going to take in a request. This is going to be the request that's sent from our front end to our back end. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to have a try and except block. So we'll say accept exception as E, and we'll just handle the exception first. So if there is an exception, then we're going to raise an HTTP exception. The status code is actually going to be 500, which I believe is unauthorized or bad request or something like that. And we're going to say invalid credentials, okay, as the details. Now inside of try, we're going to do the following. We're going to say the request state is equal to the Clerk underscore SDK dot authenticate, all right, underscore request. And what we're going to do is pass the following. We're going to pass our request and we're going to bring in something else from here called authenticated or authenticate, sorry, request options. All right, so we're going to bring in authenticate request options. Here, we're going to use the authenticate request options and we're going to specify the following. We're going to say the authorized underscore parties is equal to, and then we need to specify the URL that this request is coming from that we want to authorize. So we're going to say HTTP ://localhost:5173 or 5174, depending on whatever port you're running on. I'm going to add both of them because I could be running on either port. Okay, so all this is saying is essentially what domain is able to be authorized by our backend here. Same thing that we were doing in the course. I'm just adding the exact domain this time. Okay, then beneath here, we're going to pass this JWT key. And for the JWT key, we're going to say os.getEnv. And then this is going to be the JWT underscore key. Now, when you add this JWT key, it's going to make this thing right here, which we're going to look at in 1 second, happen serverless. Again, it means we don't need to actually send a network request. If you don't have this value and you commented it out, then what that means is that this is actually going to send a request to the Clerk server to authorize the key. Either way works. However, this is going to be a lot faster, so that's why we're doing it serverless. Now we're going to say if not request, okay, and this is going to be underscore state dot, and then this is actually is signed in. So it's going to tell us if the user is signed in or not. Then we're going to raise an HTTP exception. This time it's going to be 401, and we're just going to say invalid token. Okay. And actually for the detail here in this, let's actually just throw the error message so that we can see that if it's something different. Okay, so we're almost done here. Essentially, we're trying to authorize the user or authenticate the request by using these request options. This is going to look in the request, find the token that we sent, and then use the secret keys that we have to see if this token is valid. Now, if we are not actually signed in and we did have some kind of token or something, we're going to say, well, this is invalid. Otherwise, we're going to just show them what the error message is. Now, under here, we're going to say user ID is equal to the request state, and then this is going to be dot payload dot get, and then we're going to get something called the sub. Now the sub is a convention, but this is going to store the user's ID. So essentially what will happen here, right, is we're going to authenticate this request by getting a particular token. We can then decode that token, and in that token, it will contain the particular user who it belongs to, which is under this field called sub. There's also some other values as well, but this is the one that we care about. So this allows us to essentially know what user is sending what request to our backend server. So now we have the user's identification, which comes from Clerk, and we can return that by saying return user ID is the user's ID. So not only does this authenticate that the token is valid, it gets the particular user that sent this request, which is obviously important on our backend if we're going to have some kind of quota for the users that are working with our API. Okay, so that's our utility.py file. Now we can use this whenever a request is sent to our backend to verify that the request is valid. All right, so now that this authentication kind of helper function is written, I want to start writing some of the database related functions because we need to kind of understand the data models we're going to have in the background here, and then we can write the routes. So let's go to database, and we have two files. We have db.py and models.py. Now, actually, let's start with models.py, and then we can write db.py. Now, if you've not worked with SQL Alchemy before, essentially this is something called an ORM, which stands for an object relational mapping. Now, this effectively allows us to write Python classes that represent a SQL table. So SQL being like structured query language. If you've ever worked with any of these databases before, you know that you kind of have tables. In the tables, you have different columns, which is like the fields or the values that they store. And then you have rows, which is like an entry or an entity in the table. Now, rather than us having to manually execute all of the SQL code and worry about that, Python has these kind of wrappers called object relational mappings that allow us to write Python code that kind of maps to that database entry. So that's what I'm going to do right now. So I'm going to start by saying from SQL Alchemy, I'm going to import the following. Okay, let's go here. I'm going to import column, integer. This is the type of a column, right? A string, a date time, and then a create engine function. Okay, then I'm going to say from, and let's go down here, from SQL Alchemy, and it already knows exactly what I want. .ext.declarative, import the declarative base. Don't worry, it will become bright in a second when we start using it. And then from SQL Alchemy.orm, import the session maker. And then lastly, from datetime, import datetime. Okay, so these are the 4 imports that we need. Now what we're going to do is we're going to create an engine. Now the engine is specifying what database we actually want to use. Again, this already knows exactly what I want, which is very, very scary, but I want to have create engine, and then I'm going to use SQLite. Now SQLite just means that this database will run locally on our own computer. It will just be a file that's automatically created. If you wanted to connect to a remote database, so you had like a MySQL database, or you're hosting it in the cloud or something, then you would adjust the options here to connect to that using a database connection string. In this case, we're just using the kind of local string for our own computer. Now we're going to say base is equal to declarative base. Now this is a base that we use for all of our models that allows these to not just be standard Python classes, but to be these object relational mapping classes that kind of connect to our database. So you'll see what I mean in 1 second, but I'm going to say class challenge, and this is going to inherit from base. It's important that all of your models inherit from this declarative base so that you can kind of create them in the database afterwards. Now you need to specify the table name. So I'm going to say table name is equal to challenges here. Okay, and we have 2 underscores, table name, 2 underscores, kind of a special variable. All right, now we need to write all of the different values that we want to store for a challenge. So let's think, right? If we have a challenge, what do we actually need? Well, we need like some kind of identifier, like an ID. We need the difficulty of the challenge. We probably want to know when it was created. We want to know who it was created by. We want to have like a title or the content of the challenge. We need the options, like the multiple choice options. We need the correct answer, and we need the explanation. There's quite a few fields, right? So let's write all of them out. So we're going to say ID is equal to column. The first value you put here is the type of the column. In this case is an integer. And we're going to say primary key is equal to true. Now, primary key means that this is a unique identifier, so every single challenge will have a different ID. All right, then we're going to have a difficulty. Now, difficulty is going to be equal to column string. And we're just going to say nullable equals false, which means every challenge has to have a difficulty. Then we're going to say date created is equal to, this is going to be a date time column, and the default is going to be datetime.now. This is a function. And what will happen is if we don't pass a date created, by default, it will call this function, and whatever this function returns, that's what the value will be in this field. So it'll just get the current date essentially and put this in here when we create it. Then we're going to have created by. Now this is going to be a string column. Again, nullable is going to be equal to false, and this is going to store the ID of our Clerk user who created this challenge. This will be kind of the linkage between our user and our challenges, so we know which user created what challenges. Then we're going to have a title. This is going to be a string as well. Again, we'll say nullable is equal to false. We're going to have the options. This can be a string as well with nullable equal to false. And for the options, we're going to have a string like this, like option 1, option 2, option 3, etc., where we'll separate the options with commas. Okay, now after our options, we're going to have the correct underscore answer ID. This is going to be a column. This column will be an integer, and again, nullable will be false, so this means we need this value. And then explanation, same thing, will be a string column with nullable equal to false. Okay, that's the first model, fairly straightforward. Now we're going to make another model, and this one is going to be our challenge quota. Okay, so this is going to store essentially how many challenges left each user can generate in any given day. So we're going to say challenge quota, and we're going to take in our base as the parent class. We're going to specify the table name again. So table name is going to be equal to challenge quotas. We're going to have the ID, which is equal to a column. The column is going to be type integer. And again, primary key is equal to true because we need a unique identifier for every single thing that we have in our database. Then we need the user ID. So we're going to say the user ID is equal to column. This is going to be of type string. Nullable is going to be equal to false. And unique is going to be equal to true. This means that we can only have one user ID in this table, so we can't have multiple and we don't mess anything up, right? We just want one user ID in here. So every user has kind of an entry in this field or in this table, sorry, that specifies how much quota they have remaining. Now the next field is going to be quota underscore remaining. This is going to be a column, which is an integer. We're going to say nullable is equal to false, and we're going to say the default is equal to, and let's just go with 50 for right now, which means they're going to start with 50 quota. Now you can put whatever you want here as the starting value. I'm just making it high enough that we can test with this. Then we're going to have the last reset date, and this is going to be a column, which is a date time, and same thing, the default is going to be datetime.now. This is going to store the last time the user reset their quota. So if it's been more than 24 hours, then it will allow them, well, based on the code that we'll write, it will allow them to get more quota. Okay, so now that we've created the models, we need to run some code that is actually going to essentially make these in SQL. So we've defined them in Python, but we now need to kind of take this definition and convert it to SQL code. And fortunately, we can do that really easily. We can say base.metadata.create all, and then we can pass our engine. Now what this is going to do is it's going to take all of these models that we've written. It's going to use the engine, so the database that we specified, and it's just going to essentially make these tables in SQL for us. Okay, then we're going to say the session local is equal to session maker. We're going to say auto commit is false, auto flush is false, and we're going to bind this to the engine. Now, what this is going to allow us to do is have a session that represents our database connection, and we're going to write a simple function here called get_db. What this is going to do is say db is equal to session local, and it's going to be the following. Okay, this is just straight from the FastAPI documentation and the SQL Alchemy documentation, but what we're going to do is yield the database, and if there's any errors, we're just going to close the database like this. Okay, the reason why we have this is to make sure that we don't keep creating duplicate sessions of our database, because every session is kind of a different connection. So the point is we're going to have one single connection to our database, and anytime someone wants to get the database, we're just going to yield that connection. Okay, this might be a little bit confusing if you don't know what a yield is. This is what's called a generator in Python. Don't worry about it too much. This just gives us the database session so that we're able to actually use it. And now we're pretty much done with this models.py file, and we just need to write the db.py file. Now the db.py file is going to be our kind of helper functions for interacting with this database, and I'm going to show you how we can create new, new entities in the database, essentially, fetch entities, etc. All right, so we're in our db.py file, and we're going to start with some imports. So we're going to say from SQL Alchemy import the session. We're going to say from date time import date time and time delta. We're going to say from dot import models, and this is going to allow us to import the models file right here. Okay, so now we just have a few functions that we need to write in order to essentially interact with the database. I believe we have 5 here, so let's write them out. So the first is going to be get underscore challenge underscore quota. So pretty straightforward, but we want to know how much quota we have left for each user. So we're going to say db and then session and then user underscore ID, and this is going to be type string. Now I'm just typing this function so it's a little bit more clear how it works. Then what we're going to do is we're going to return db.query. The way that the query works is you specify, first of all, what table or what model you want to query. So in this case, we're going to say models.challenge quota. Now, again, the autocomplete is really, really good, so it already knows what we want. I'm just going to make this a little bit cleaner by separating this out here. So you can see that we're saying db.query. We're going to query on the challenge quota model. We're going to filter the models.challengequota.userID to be equal to the user ID. This is just the criteria that we're looking for. So we're saying, okay, let's look for a user ID that's matching. And then we're going to say .first, which will give us the first entry that matches this criteria. If there's none, it will just give us none. Okay, so that's get challenge quota. Next, we're going to go create challenge quota. So we're going to say define create underscore challenge quota. We're going to take in our database, which is a session, and we're going to take in our user ID, which is a string. Then from here, we're going to say the db quota is equal to models.challenge quota, and we're going to say here user ID is equal to user ID. Okay, then we're going to say db.add the database quota. Okay, and we're going to say db.refresh, and this is going to be the db quota. And then in between here, we're going to say db.commit. So let me just explain what's going on here. When you add something, you're kind of adding it to like the staging area where it's almost ready to be committed or fully finalized. Once it's added, you need to manually commit it. So you can say db.commit. This means you'll actually then write it to the database, and then you can just refresh this entry right here. So when I say refresh, it's essentially just going to look for this in the database and reread all of the values, because as soon as I commit it, what will happen is any of the default values, so like the quota remaining, for example, or the last reset date, will be added. So I'm just refreshing it so that I get those new values. And then I can return the db quota. Okay. And one thing here, I just realized up here, I forgot to add the .orm. So we're just going to say from SQLAlchemy.orm import session, and now we don't get any of those errors. Okay, so this is how you get the quota and how you create one. When you create one, you can just say models dot whatever the model value is. You just initialize it like you initialize any object in Python. So that's what we did here. And then we can add it to the database. Okay, next, we're going to say reset quota, and then this is going to be if underscore needed. Okay, so let's spell this correctly. Then we're going to take in our database, which is a session, and we're going to take in the quota, which is going to be models.challenge quota. All right, so from here, we're going to say now is equal to datetime.now, and we're essentially going to compare today's date to the date that's stored in the quota database to see if it's been 24 hours and if we can reset it. So we'll say if now minus the quota dot last underscore reset underscore date is greater than time delta, and rather than days equal to 1, we can just go hours equals 24. Then what this means is that it's been 24 hours, so we can reset the quota. So we're going to say quota dot remaining underscore quota is equal to, set this to whatever you want. We can set it to, I don't know, maybe 10 or something. And then we can say quota dot last underscore reset underscore date. And this is going to be equal to now. And then we can say db dot commit and then db dot refresh the quota. Okay, and then we can return the quota. Perfect. So that is just going to reset if it needs to be reset, or if we can reset it. Now we're going to move on to creating a challenge. Okay, so we're going to say define create underscore challenge. Now for this, again, we're going to need our database, which is a session, and there's a lot of other things that we need as well. So let's kind of spread this out and start writing them one by one. Okay, so we need our database, but we also need the difficulty, which is going to be a string. We need the created by, okay, which is going to be a string. We need the title, which is a string. So let's fix that. What else do we need? We need the options, which will be a string as well. We need the correct answer ID, which will be an int. And then we need the explanation, which will be a string. So we're just passing all the values that we need here to this function, and then we can essentially use them to just create a challenge. So we're going to say the DB challenge is equal to models.challenge. We're just going to pass all of the same values that we have here for our, parameters. And then we can say db.add the database challenge, db.commit, db.refresh the database challenge, and we can return the DB challenge. Okay, feel free to pause the video. I know that I'm going a little bit quick because the autocomplete is finishing a bunch of stuff for us, but there you go, right? So we have the session, difficulty created by, title, options, correct answer ID, etc., etc. The last thing that we need is just a function that will get all of the challenges for a particular user. So we're going to say get user underscore challenges. This essentially is going to be the history. Same thing, we need the DB session, we need the user ID, which will be a string. And then what we're going to do is we are going to return db.query. This is going to be the models.challenge. And then this is going to be .filter. And we're going to say this is models.challenge. And then this is going to be created by is equal to the user ID. And then we will just return all of them. So rather than returning first, we return all, which gives us all of the entries that this user has created or that we return from this query. Okay, so that is it. Let me just space these out a little bit so they're easier to read. For our database.py file, again, all of this is available from the link in the description in case you need to copy anything in. So let's just close everything for right now. We have our models, we have our database.py, we have app.py, we have utils.py. Now it is time to write our routes. So we're going to go to routes. We're going to go to challenge.py, and this is where we're going to write the things that we can actually call. So essentially the slash endpoints on our API. So the slash, get challenges or get quota. This is where we write the routes. Okay, so let's do this. Once we write this, most of the backend is finished. Then we can start hooking up the front end, writing the AI component, and we'll be good to go. If you made it to this part, give yourself a pat on the back. It is a lot of code and a lot of work to get these projects done. Okay. So we're going to say from FastAPI, import the API router. We're also going to import depends, HTTP exception, and request. We're then going to say from Pydantic, import the base model, and we're going to say from SQLAlchemy.orm, we're going to import the session. Okay, and this is with a capital. Then we're going to look in our database and import all of those functions that we wrote. So we're going to say from ... database.db import, and we're going to import the get challenge quota, the create challenge, the create challenge quota, the reset quota if needed, and the, what do we call this? The get user challenges. That's what we need. Okay. Then we're going to say from ... utils, import the authenticate and get user details. We're going to say from ... database, so ... database models. Okay, and we're going to import the get underscore DB. We're then going to import JSON, and we're almost done. We're going to say from datetime. Okay, import datetime. All right, so from here, we're going to start by setting up our API router now. Essentially, this allows us to make our code more modular and have different routes in different files. So we can just set up the router like this, and then we can kind of connect this router in our app, which you're going to see in 1 second. Okay, now we have 3 main routes that we need in this file. Now those routes are going to be 1 to generate a challenge, 1 to get the history, so all of the challenges the user has generated, and 1 to get the current quota, so how many challenges left you can generate. So let's start with the history. So in order to do this, we're going to say at router.get, and then we're going to say /my history. Okay. Then from here, we're going to say async define get underscore, or actually we can just call this maybe my history. The function name really doesn't matter. What's important is this right here. And we're saying this is going to be a GET request. And then this is the URL that you're going to send it to. Then we're going to say the request is request. We're going to say DB is session equals, and then this is going to be depends on get underscore DB. Now what this is going to do is it's going to automatically get the database session for us. So that's why we wrote that kind of get DB function and kind of inject it into this function. All right, so from here, we're going to say the user details are equal to, and this is going to be authenticate and get user details. And I don't want all that. We're going to have our request. What this will do is essentially authenticate the user, and it will get the user details for us so we know which user is calling this function. Then we're going to say the user underscore ID is equal to user details dot get, and we'll just get the user ID. Okay. Then we're going to say challenges are equal to get user challenges. We'll pass our database and our user ID. That function is already written, so it should just give it to us. And then we can return challenges and challenges like that. When we do that, this will just be able, the front end or whoever calls this array will be able to just view all of the different challenges. Now let's write another one. So we're going to say at router.get, and this is going to be for the quota. So we'll just say / quota like that. Then we're going to say async define, and we'll say get underscore quota. We're going to take in the request as always, and we're going to take in the same thing, our database, which is a session, which will automatically be injected here. Now we're going to copy the first two lines. So we're going to get the user details and the user ID, and then we're going to get the quota from the database. So we're going to say quota is equal to get challenge quota. We're going to pass our database and our user ID, and we're going to say if not quota. So if they don't have any quota, then we're going to return the following. We're going to return user ID is their user ID. We're going to return the quota remaining. So quota underscore remaining, which is going to be 0. And we're going to pass or return, the last reset date, which will just be now. So we're just going to return datetime dot now like that. Okay, should be good. All right, so almost done here. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to say quota is equal to reset quota if needed. So anytime that we check the quota, we'll just actually see if we need to reset it. And then we can return the quota like this. Okay, perfect. So that should be it for right now for the two get endpoints. Now we need to write the one post endpoint, which is the one that the user can call to generate the challenge. All right, this one's a little bit longer, just bear with me. So actually, first thing we're going to do is we're going to define what's called a schema. The schema is something that FastAPI can use to validate that the data being sent to the endpoint is correct. So when the user wants to create a challenge, they need to tell us what they want the difficulty of the challenge to be. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a class called challenge request. This is very common in FastAPI. Okay, this is going to inherit from the base model, and all we're going to do is specify what we're expecting in the request from the user so the FastAPI can check it for us. So we're going to say the difficulty is of type string. Okay, that's it. And then we're going to say class config, and we can actually specify an example so that if there's an error, someone who's trying to send this request can see what the example looks like. So we're going to say JSON underscore schema, okay, let's spell this correctly, underscore extra like this is equal to, and then we're just going to go example, and then we're going to go difficulty, and then this is going to be easy. Okay, so we just created this very simple, again, it's called a schema that allows us to make sure that the user is going to send the correct type of data to our endpoint. So now we're going to say at router, okay, dot post. This is going to be / create or / generate dash challenge. We're going to have a function. This is going to be an async function. So async define generate challenge. And actually this messed up a little bit. So let me just rewrite this. We're going to say request, and this time it's going to be the challenge request. And then for our database, it'll be the same thing. Database session equals to depends on get database. All right, now inside of here, what we're gonna do is try to generate this challenge. Now this is where the AI will come in, which we're gonna write in a second. For now, we'll just kind of return a mock challenge, or we just won't return anything. And then we'll write the AI component, which can generate the challenge for us. So we're gonna have a try and an accept block. We'll accept the exception as E, and for now we'll just pass. And in the try, we're gonna copy these 2 lines again. So we're gonna put these here, okay, to get the user details. Now, in order to actually generate the challenge, we need to check the quota. So similarly to what we did down here, I'm just gonna copy this to get the challenge quota. Okay, so we're gonna go here and say quota. We're gonna see if they don't have a quota. So we're gonna say if not quota, then we'll just make one for them because they should have a quota. So we will create challenge quota. And then we're gonna say quota is equal to reset quota if needed. So same thing, if they send the request, we're gonna try to reset the quota to make sure that they have the ability to do this if it's been more than 24 hours. And then we're gonna check the quota. So we're gonna say if the quota, remaining quota is less than 0, or less than or equal to, sorry, we're gonna raise the HTTP exception of 429, which is kind of like a rate limit exception. And we're gonna say the quota has been exhausted. Okay. So all we're doing is we're getting the user details and their ID. We're getting their kind of quota object in the database. If they don't have one, we'll make one for them so that they have the ability to send this request. Then we're going to reset their quota so that if it was 0, but it's been more than 24 hours, they have the ability to do this. Then we're going to check what the actual remaining amount is. Could be 0, could be 1, could be 50, whatever. If they don't have any, we'll raise this exception. Otherwise, we will allow them to generate the challenge. So for right now, we're going to say the challenge data is equal to none because we don't have the ability to generate the challenge yet, but we will do it in a second. So we'll say challenge data is equal to none. We'll put a to do and we'll say generate challenge. Okay. And then we are just going to reduce the quota. So we're going to say quota.remaining quota minus equals 1 and then db.commit. So we're just going to commit the changes that we've now made to the database. And then we would return the challenge data. Now, again, we haven't yet created the challenge data, so we need to do that first before we can return it. But this endpoint at least is pretty much set up now to work properly. The only last thing that we need to do is handle this exception. So if there's an exception here, we're going to raise the HTTP exception. We'll go with status code 400. Okay, I think which is bad request. And then we'll have string E. All right, so that is it for the post endpoint. We are almost done here. We just need the ability to generate the challenge, and then we need to connect the front end to the back end. So we can go in kind of any order that we want here, but I think I want to start with the AI generation because once we have that, then we can really test everything thoroughly. Now, really, this AI generation is pretty straightforward. All we're going to do is send a request to OpenAI using one of their models, and we're essentially just going to ask it to generate a challenge for us based on the particular format that we want the challenge to be in. So we'll give it an example and say, like, we need the challenge to look exactly like this, and then it will just generate it for us. We can grab that challenge and we can return it. So let's start working on this file. All right, so let's start. We're going to say import OS, import JSON, and we're going to say from OpenAI, import OpenAI, like that. We're then going to say from typing, import dictionary and any. Okay. We're then going to say client is equal to OpenAI, and we need to specify the API key, which I'm going to show you how to get in 1 second. So we do need an OpenAI key for OpenAI. I mean, you can use any LLM that you want, but I'm just going to show you OpenAI because this is the simplest to use. So what we're doing is we're going to create an OpenAI client, which allows us to create completions using the LLM. But of course, we need this key. So what we're going to do is copy this right here, OpenAI API key. We're going to put this in our environment variable file. Let me find it right here. And we're going to specify this key. Now, in order to get this key, you're going to go to platform.openai.com, okay, and navigate to API keys. I believe you can actually go to platform.openai.com/API-keys, but if you get to this site at least, you should be able to do this. Now, obviously, you're going to need an account with OpenAI, and you will need a credit card here. However, this will really not cost you any money at all, especially if you don't use it a lot. It might be like a few cents, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to make a new key. So I'm going to go create new key. I'm going to call this, I don't know, tutorial AI app or something. I have so many keys here. I got to delete some of these, and I am going to copy this. Okay, I'm then going to go back here and I'm going to paste the OpenAI API key. I will delete it after, don't worry, so you guys cannot steal it from me. Obviously, do not share these keys with other people. That's the whole reason we even have this backend to begin with. And now that it's inside of there, we're good to go and we're able to interact with OpenAI. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a function called generate underscore challenge with underscore AI. Okay. Now we're just going to take in a difficulty, which is a string, but if you wanted to adapt this, you could take in really any information that you want that you could add to the prompt to generate the question. Now I'm going to specify that this is going to return a dict of string and any. That's why I brought in the typing here. And I'm going to copy in a very large system prompt. Now you can copy this directly from the GitHub link, but I will read through it so you can kind of see what it is we're actually doing. Okay. So I said, you are an expert coding challenge creator. Your task is to generate a coding question with multiple choice answers. The question should be appropriate for the specified difficulty level. For easy questions, focus on basic syntax, etc. Medium questions, hard questions, you guys can read that. Now the important part, return the challenge in the following JSON structure. Title, options, correct answer ID, explanation. Make sure the options are plausible with only one clearly correct answer. All right, so that is my system prompt. I have tested many different prompts. This one seems to work the best, and this will generate 99% of the time the correct question. Sometimes you might get an error because you never know what LLMs are going to give you, but generally speaking, this works pretty well. We can make it more advanced and more consistent, but for this project, this is totally fine. So what I want to do now is I want to put a try block, and I'm going to say response is equal to client.chat.completions.create. Okay. Now, when we want to create a completion with the LLM, we can do something like this. So we can specify the model that we want to use. So I'm just going to use a cheap one, like 3.5 turbo. And then you can specify the date. I'm going to go 0125 for this. So what is this? January 2025. And then what we can do is we can pass the messages that we want it to read before it gives us a completion. So I'm saying messages is role system content system prompt. I'm saying role user content generate a difficulty coding question. The reason why this works is I'm using an F string and I am passing in the difficulty that we have in this function. So we have the system prompt, which is always the same, and then we embed the difficulty in a different message here. All right, now another thing that we're going to specify here, and I don't know why we're getting this error actually. Oh, it's because we don't have the accept block. That's fine. Is I'm going to say the response underscore format is equal to type. And then this is going to be a JSON underscore object. Now, this is really cool that you could do this. What it means is that it's not going to give you normal markdown text back. It's going to give you just a JSON object. So it should adhere to this exact format and make it much more consistent than it normally would be. Then we're going to specify the temperature. So I want to make this temperature something that is higher than like 0 to 0.3. Like I want it to be between 0.5 to 0.7 so that it gives me something that's more creative, but is kind of random, but is still accurate. So essentially the higher temperature you go, the more random and creative the model is. However, it can be wrong and it can make mistakes. So a good balanced temperature is something like 0.5 to 0.7, which is what I have right here, which will still give us some creativity, but it's not going to go crazy and do something that's potentially incorrect. I mean, it could still be incorrect, but it's less likely. Now I'm just going to put my accept block here, accept exception as E and pass, just so that we don't have that kind of error popping up right now. And now this should generate the response for us. Now you can use any model you want. You could probably use a better model, but this one is fine for right now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the content out of this reply. So I'm going to say content is equal to response dot choices 0 dot message dot content. The reason why I need to do choices 0 is because this is going to give me a list of all of the responses, even though we just did one. And then we can get the message content from that particular response. All right, so now that we have the content, we're going to get the challenge data from that content by doing json.loads content. Now what this is going to do is take the string which is returned to us from OpenAI and convert it into a Python dictionary, which we can then return. Now we're just going to validate that this is correct before we return it to the front end. So we're going to say required, if we can spell this correctly, underscore fields is equal to title, options, correct answer ID, and explanation. Okay. Then we're going to say for field in the required fields, and we're going to say if the field is not in the challenge data, then we're going to raise the exception and we're going to say missing required field. Okay, and actually we can raise a value error to be a bit more specific here. All right, so now that we've done that, we're just going to return the challenge data because it is valid. And in our exception, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to print E. And what I'll do actually after this is I'm just going to return a sample question so that we don't get a failure when you call this endpoint if something goes wrong when we are doing the, generation of this question. So I'm just doing a really simple question here, just hard coding one, saying, hey, basic Python list operations, here's a few options, here's the correct answer ID. So when OpenAI does fail, and it does happen sometimes, we will get a question. It will just be the same question every time, right? Now you could do a bunch of them, you could randomly generate them, however you want to do that, but this is kind of a nice backup option that we have. Okay, so that is the AI generation, which should be working now. Let's go back into the file menu, and we just need to use that now from our challenge endpoint. So when we generate the challenge, so where it says challenge data, we essentially just need to call that function. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to say challenge data is equal to generate a challenge. What do we actually call this function? I think we called it generate challenge with AI. Okay, so generate challenge with underscore AI, and we need to import that. So you'll see, 1 second here, I believe that it automatically imported it for us. So it says from .ai generator, import the generate challenge with AI, which is what we need. So we're going to use that function thanks to PyCharm here, and generate challenge with AI just takes the difficulty. So we're just going to pass the request.difficulty. Now that we have the challenge data, we're going to create the challenge. So we're going to say new challenge, because we need to put this in the database, is equal to create challenge. And we just need to pass all of the values that are on our challenge. So we're going to say database is equal to DB. We're going to say the difficulty is the request.difficulty. We're going to say the created by is the user ID. And then we can just pass all of our challenge data by using this ** challenge data. What this does is it unpacks this dictionary and passes all of the keys and values as arguments to this particular function. So it's kind of just a shortcut that's a fancy piece of Python syntax. So we have the new challenge now, and what we're going to do is rather than just returning our challenge data, we're actually going to return a custom dictionary here that specifies the values that we want the user to see related to the challenge. So for the ID, we're going to say new challenge.id. For the difficulty of this challenge, it's going to be the request.difficulty. For the title of the challenge, this is going to be the new challenge.title. For the options, this is why we need to do this. What we're going to do is say json.loads, and we're going to load the new challenge.options. Okay, so let's just go here. All right, so we're going to load that as JSON data. We're going to say the correct answer ID is equal to new challenge.correct answer ID. We're going to say the explanation is new challenge.explanation. And we're going to say the timestamp, okay, is equal to the new challenge.date underscore created.iso format. Okay, if you look at ISO format here, you can see that it just returns us the format year, month, day, HHMMSS. So it's giving us the correct time format. Or actually, sorry, this one up here, but I think it's the same thing as this. Cool. So there we go. We now have this endpoint written, so we can now test this out from our front end. So quick recap, we wrote all of the backend functions pretty much, other than the webhook stuff, which we're going to look at in a second. And now what we need to do is we just need to connect this challenge, or these challenge routes, or this API router to our application. So we're going to go to app.py, and inside of here, we're going to say app.include router, and we're going to include the challenge.router with the prefix of equal to /API. So we're going to say from dot routes import challenge. Okay, so now we have the challenge dot router, which is the API router, and we're just setting a prefix, which now means if we wanted to call the slash generate challenge, because we added the prefix, we're going to have to put a slash API slash generate challenge, just so that we can separate the different routes. Okay, so that should be everything. Fingers crossed. I mean, there's always mistakes that happen, so let's see. But what I would like to do now is run the backend and just see if it's working and test it out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a new terminal window here. I'm going to cd into my backend, and I'm going to type uv run server.py. And we're going to see if we have any errors. It says the API client option must be set either by passing API key or by passing the OpenAI variable. Okay, so interesting. Let's go fix that problem really quickly. All right, guys, so I was just looking at this and I realized that the error is that for some reason the environment variable file is not loaded when this AI generator file is imported. So what I did is I just put an import here. I said from.env import load.env, and then I called this load.env function. However, it looks like we're getting another problem where it's saying there's no module clerk backend API found. So we're going to look at that quickly. I'm going to fix that error and be right back. Okay, now there's another error that I need to fix quickly. Sorry guys for the cutting here, just popped up. So I accidentally installed, I'm going to go back to this here for a second, the Clerk SDK, which is not what I meant to install. I meant to install the Clerk backend API. So what I need to do is remove this from my pyproject.toml file, or if you're using pip, remove it from your requirements.txt, and then you need to type uv add and then clerk underscore backend underscore API. This will now fix the problem. So the error we were getting earlier in the video was actually a mistake because I had the wrong package installed. So when we add this, it should add it now back to our pyproject.toml. We now have the correct thing. And now if we type uv run server.py with this new module installed, it should run the FastAPI application. So you can see that it gave us some problem here. Okay, it's because I'm actually already running an API on this port, so I just need to shut that down, but this should have worked for you. So let me fix up my local machine. I'll be right back. Okay, so now we're good, and the API is running on port 8000. Now you could actually test this API directly from PyCharm because they have an endpoints tab here, so we could test it in here, but I just want to connect it directly to the front end, and actually you'll see that it's showing me the API endpoints I have because it supports FastAPI and the documentation out of the box. So very easy to test in here, but I do just want to go and test it from Clerk because these aren't going to work unless we have our authentication token from the front end. So everything in the back end should be done now except for the webhook, which we're going to look at later. So let's now go to the front end and connect this up. So I'm going to close all of these. I'm going to go to my front end and I'm going to go to src and I'm going to go to utils and then api.js. Now inside here, I'm going to write a function which is going to allow us to send a request that contains the clerk token that we need to our backend. So from here, we're going to say import use auth from, okay, and this is going to be at clerk, all right, let's spell this correctly, /clerk react. Now this is a hook, and it's essentially a function that you can call that's going to give you the authentication details of the current user. There's a bunch of other hooks that Clerk provides that makes it very easy to work with the authentication, but this is the one that we need to get the token, which then allows us to send the token to the backend. So here I'm going to say export const use API. So I'm going to write a custom hook here. And what this is going to do is say const get token is equal to use auth. Okay, so there's a function called get token that comes from this use auth hook. There's some other ones as well, but this is the one that we need. And this will allow us to, well, get the token. So I'm going to make a function called make request. Now this is going to take in the endpoint and the options, okay, just going to be equal to an empty dictionary by default. And then what we are going to do here is we're going to get the token. We're going to add this token as a header in our request. And then we're just going to send the request based on whatever endpoint the user wants to hit with whatever options they specify. So we're going to say const token is equal to get token. Okay. Now we need to await this because this is async. So we're going to say const token is equal to await, which also means we need to make this function an async function. All right. So now we're going to get the token. We're going to say const default options are equal to, and we're going to specify headers. And then for the headers, we're going to say the content type is equal to application JSON, and we're going to specify an authorization header. Okay, and this is going to contain our clerk token. Now we're going to use backticks here, and we're going to say bearer, and then we're going to do a $, and we're going to embed the token here. Now this is a bearer authorization token, so we just have to put bearer before it, put the token coming from clerk, and these are our default options that we're going to include with every single request. Then we're going to say const response, and we're going to actually send the request, and we're going to say await fetch. Now when we fetch, we're going to fetch the endpoint the user specified. So we're going to say fetch http / localhost port 8000, which is our backend, /API, and then it's going to be / and then $, endpoint. Okay. Then we're going to go down here and we're going to specify the options. So we're going to say ... default options, and it's going to be ... sorry, so 3 dots. So it's going to take all of our default options. We're also going to put in all of the options that the user specifies, and actually that should be good. Okay, then we're going to go down here and we're going to say if not response.ok, then what we're going to do is not throw an error, but we're going to say const error data is equal to await response.json.catch. Okay, and then we're just going to return null here, and we're going to say if the response.status is equal to 429, which is our rate limit, then we're going to throw a new error, and we're going to say the daily quota exceeded. Okay, so that's good for that. And then down here, we're going to say throw new error, and then it's going to be error data.message, or an error occurred. And actually not .message, it's going to be .detail. Okay, then lastly, we will return the response.json, and we will return this make request function. All right, so essentially what we've done here is we've written this use API hook. This use API hook here is going to allow us to access this make request function. This make request function will let us send a request that already has all of the default options that we need, including the authorization headers. So that's why we're doing it. We're just writing this kind of, generic function that can send any type of request. So it automatically gets the token for us and just makes our life a little bit easier. So now that we have that, we need to start using this in our front end components. Don't worry, we are almost done here. So first thing, we want to be able to generate a challenge. So let's go to challenge and then challenge generator. Now we have fetch quota and get next reset time, as well as generate challenge. And this is where we're going to use that function we just wrote. So we're going to import that. So we're going to say import, and this is going to be use API from our API, and then API context. What is that? That is not correct. It's API.utils/API.js. Okay, autocomplete is steering us wrong on that one. Now we're going to do the following. We're going to say const make request is equal to use API. So we're going to use that function. It's going to give us the make request function. And then we can use make request from these various functions that we have. So first things first, we're going to write a use effect. For the use effect, we are going to fetch our quota. So we're going to say fetch quota. Okay, that's going to call this function. Then from fetch quota, we are going to try to get our quota. So we're going to say try, and then this is going to be const data is equal to await make request, and we're going to make a request to the quota endpoint. Okay, then we're going to say set quota data. All right, then we're going to catch any errors that occur, and we're just going to say console.log. Okay, and we'll just show whatever that error is in the logs. Okay, so that is fetching the quota. Next, we need the ability to generate the challenge. So for generating the challenge, we're going to go in here. We're going to say set is loading to true. We're going to set any error that we have to null, because we're going to clear that before we make our request. And then we're going to try to send our request. Now to send the request, we are going to say const data is equal to await make request. For the make request, we are going to send this to the generate challenge endpoint. And for the options, we need to specify the method. So we're going to say the method should be post. And we're going to say the body should be JSON.stringify and then difficulty. Now this is just going to pass the difficulty, which we need for this particular request. Okay, that's it for the data. Then we can say set challenge data, which is going to be the response from this request. And then we're going to fetch the quota again, just to update this on the UI. Now we're going to have a catch. We're going to catch any errors that occur, and we're going to set the error to be the error.message. Okay. Or finally, we are going to say set is loading to false. Okay. And also we'll just do something here. We'll say error.message, or we're going to say failed to generate challenge in case we don't have any error message returned. So we'll say failed to generate challenge. Okay. So that should be the generate challenge function. Lastly, we need the get next reset time just so we can display that on the screen. So we're going to say here, if not quota, so not, let's disable the uppercase here, question mark dot last reset date. Then what we're going to do is just return null. Otherwise, we're going to say const the reset date is equal to new date. Then this is going to be quota dot the last reset date. Then we're going to say reset date dot set hours, and we're going to get the reset date dot get hours plus 24 because it's going to be 24 hours from the time that we last resetted when we're able to reset, and we're going to return the reset date. Okay. Now we're just going to use this function. So remember here when I said next reset is equal to 0, well, we're just going to swap this with the call to the function. So get next reset time. Then we're going to go question mark dot to locale string. Okay, so it shows us in our current time zone. All right, so that should be good. And now we should be able to actually generate a challenge. Now, fingers crossed, because nothing ever goes right the first time when you're testing something. But let's go to our front end, which I think is still running. Yes, it is. We are signed in. We don't have any challenges yet because we haven't made any requests to the backend. Let's actually just check the console and see if we have any errors that are relevant. And it's telling us that we have invalid token. Okay, so let me sign out and sign back in here. And let's see if we're still going to get an invalid token or if there's anything that we need to change on the backend. Okay, so same thing, 401 invalid token. Let's dig into this and see what the issue is. All right, so very silly mistake here. I was just debugging this by printing out the request state to see what the error is. The problem is that I forgot to put 5174 as one of my authorized parties. So it's telling me, hey, the authorized party claim doesn't match, so it's not allowing me to do this. So I'm going to reset the server now after I've changed this to allow my front end origin or my front end kind of URL. And when I refresh now, we should see that this works. Okay, and it does work. It's just not giving us the correct challenges remaining. All right, guys, so just digging through here, and I found a small mistake that I quickly want to fix for us. So if we look on line 36 within the generate challenge, we just need to say if not quota, quota is equal to create challenge quota. Now, that will fix any error that will pop up later. For right now, what we're seeing is that it's not giving us any quota on the front end. The reason for this is we didn't create the quota for the user yet, which is actually what the next step is that I want to set up for us. However, we can still test this if we just change something on the UI really quickly. So if we go to challenge generator and we go all the way down to where we have the button, so where does it say generate challenge? If we just remove this disabled and we just say disabled is false for right now, then we can go back here and we can try to generate a challenge. And of course we get another error. So let's see what that problem is. Okay, so another small mistake here, guys. My apologies. We need to add another parameter to generate challenge to fix that error. So we can have the request, which is the challenge request, but then we need to have the request underscore obj be equal to the standard request so that we can accept this as well. Okay, and then what we're going to do is where we have user details, we're going to replace this with the request object. The reason why we need to do this is because we have two separate things. We have the details that we're expecting from the user, which we're calling request, And then we have the request object, which is going to be the actual request, including the headers and the authorization tokens and all of that kind of stuff when we generate the challenge. And side note, don't forget to restart your server because it's not hot reloading. So we need to reset that. And now we can try, and it looks like it is sending that request. And let's see if it's able to generate that for us. Okay, so it's giving me another error. Let's fix that up. Apologize, guys, but this is what happens, right? So you can see we get the SQLite error binding parameter 5 type list is not supported in SQL. So what we need to do is convert the list to a string for the options, which I guess I didn't do correctly, and then we should be good to go. Okay, guys, so to fix this issue that we're seeing here, essentially it's saying that, hey, you're trying to save some kind of JSON object, but you can't do that. It needs to be a string. Now to fix that, we're actually going to have to go to this create challenge line inside of challenge.py, and we're going to have to adjust this now to manually add some of the challenge data. So we're going to say the title is equal to the challenge data title, and then we're going to do the following. We're going to have options is equal to json.dumps challenge data options. We're going to have the correct answer ID is equal to challenge data correct answer ID, and the explanation is equal to challenge data explanation. Okay, so we just have to manually write these in, and we need to write this line specifically. This is the most important one. So we take what is normally a list and we convert it into a string so that when we save it into the database, it actually works properly. Then when we go down here, notice I have this json.loads. I'm now taking the string and loading it as an array or loading it as a list so we can return it in the correct JSON format. So I apologize about the confusion. Again, it's kind of a small detail here. When you want to save something in SQL, we can't save it as a list, which is what I was trying to do. That's the error that it was giving me here. I need to save it as a string, so that's how I've changed it. So now if I restart my server and we make sure this is all saved, we, fingers crossed, should be able to get this to work. So let's refresh. Let's make sure the quota loads. It does. Let's try to generate an easy challenge and let's see if we get it. And there we go. Yes, finally the challenge shows up and you can see that it says this easy. What is the correct way to declare a variable? And we can go x equals 5 and we get an error here because challenge is not defined. So we'll fix that error, but everything looks to be working. So let's go to our front end. Let's go to SRC. Let's go to challenge, MCQ challenge. Let's search in here for challenge, which we spelled incorrectly, and let's fix this to the correct spelling. Okay, so we just had a misspelled variable. Happens, I'm sure you guys probably saw that when I did it. So let's go back now and refresh. Okay, let's go medium, generate challenge, and let's see what we get. Okay, so what is the time complexity of finding an element in a binary search tree? O log n, and then it's correct, and it gives us the explanation. Perfect. Okay, sweet. So now we just need to hook up the history and then we should be good to go. So for the history, we're going to go to the history component. This one is going to be a little bit easier because we just need to send one request. And what we're going to do is just write this fetch history function. So from fetch history, we're going to say set loading is equal to true actually. We're going to say set error is equal to null. We're then going to try the following. We're going to say try const data is equal to await fetch, and then we're going to go API/my-history. And actually, we can just do my history because the API one is already written there. We're then going to say set history, and this is going to be the data dot challenges like that. Okay. Then we're going to catch any errors. So we're going to say catch error, and we're going to say set error, and we'll just say failed to load history. Okay, and then we're going to have a finally, and we're just going to say set is loading to false. Okay, so that's it for loading the history. Literally just this one quick function. Let's boot this up and refresh and see if we get our history. It says cannot read properties undefined of length. So that's probably something to do with us maybe spelling this incorrectly. So we may even have the wrong endpoint here. Let's try it out. So let's console.log this data. I'm going to debug this live with you guys and see what we've messed up. So we're going to console.log this, and we can see we get a response. And if we go here, it's just maybe that we haven't yet loaded the actual JSON from this. So we said await, fetch, and that's why. It's because we have fetch and we haven't used make request. So I tried to use fetch when really I want to use the make request function that we wrote specifically for doing this, which we need to bring in. So we're going to say const make request is equal to use API. Okay. And then we're going to go here and just change this to say make request to my history. Okay, so now if we go back and we refresh, we didn't even need to, you can see that is loading our history. And if we answer one of the questions here, you can see that it tells us if we get it right or wrong and gives us the explanation. Okay, almost done, guys. I promise. Very close to being finished. The last thing that I want to do here is I want to add a webhook. So remember we were getting this issue where when a new user was created, their quota wasn't being set. That's because when a new user is made, we should just automatically set the quota for them, but we're not doing that right now because we don't know when the new user is created, because that happens on Clerk. It doesn't happen in our backend. So I'm going to show you how we can set up a webhook so that anytime an event happens in Clerk that we want to subscribe to, it can automatically push that to our own backend. So let's go ahead and set that up. So in order to set up the webhook, we need to go to Clerk. And we need to go to the webhook section, so where it says webhooks. From here, we're going to make a new webhook. Okay, so give this a second. We're going to go to endpoints, add endpoint. I'm going to show you what URL we can use here in a second. And we're going to go and click the correct, event here. So we're going to go user, and we want to subscribe to the user.created. Okay, now you can subscribe to any events that you want. We just care about created. So for now, we're just going to put in a dummy URL just so that this will allow us to create this, and then we'll change it later. So I'm just going localhost.com, and you can see now that I've created this webhook. Okay, so this URL will change, but we subscribe to that event. Now what we need to do is we need to get this signing secret here. So we're going to copy this signing secret, and we're going to bring it in to our backend because we need to set up an endpoint that Clerk can send these events to so that we can handle them. Okay, so we're going to close all of this stuff. So let's close all of this. Let's get out of our front end. Let's go to our back end. Let's go to .env. So let's find that here. And we're going to go with clerk underscore webhook. Okay, webhook underscore secret. And we're going to make it equal to this variable. Now we need this secret so that we can confirm that when a request is sent to this particular endpoint that we set up, the Clerk was indeed the one that sent it. It's kind of a security measure because if we don't have this secret, then anyone can send a request to our webhook and can trigger something to happen which we don't want to occur. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go to routes, we're going to go to webhooks, and we're going to write a relatively simple endpoint that is going to be what Clerk can send a request to tell us that a new user was created. So we're going to say from FastAPI, import the API router, the request, the HTTP exception, and depends. Okay. We're then going to say from database.db, we are going to import the create challenge quota. Then we're going to say from database.models, import get database. We're going to say from svix.webhooks, import, and then webhook. This may be something that we need to install. We're going to see in a second. We're going to say import, okay, OS. We're going to import JSON. We're going to import logging, and we're going to import SQLAlchemy.exe, or we're going to say, sorry, from there. So let's do this. From there, import the integrity error. Okay, again, don't worry about this one right now. If we need to import it or add it, I will add it in a second. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to say router is equal to API router, and we're going to create an endpoint that Clerk can hit. So for Clerk to hit this, we're going to say at router.post. We'll just call this /clerk, and we're going to say async define, and then this is going to be handle underscore user underscore created. We're going to take in a request, which is of type request. Okay, and we're going to say that the DB is equal to session depends on get database. Now, first things first, we're going to get our webhook secret. So we're going to say the webhook secret is equal to os.getEnv, and we're going to get the clerk underscore webhook secret. Then what we're going to do is we're going to say if not webhook secret, then we're going to raise an HTTP exception with a status code of 500 and say that this is not set. Okay. Otherwise, we're going to get the body of the request. So we're going to say body is equal to await request dot body. All right. We're going to say payload is equal to body dot decode. And we're going to decode this in UTF-8 format. It's because it's going to be encoded, so we need to decode it so we're able to actually view it. We're going to get the headers. So we're going to say headers is equal to a dictionary of request.headers. Now, essentially what I'm doing is I'm just writing a bunch of code that comes from the Clerk documentation that shows us how to validate that the request being sent to this webhook is indeed from Clerk. So that's what I'm trying to do right now. And I'm going to use this library svix here to help me do that, which you'll see in 1 second. And again, if we need to install it, we will. Okay, so we're going to say try. And we're going to say WH is equal to webhook. We're going to pass the webhook secret, okay, like that. So we're going to kind of create this new webhook. We're then going to say WH dot verify, and we're going to pass the payload and the headers. So using this secret that we've put in our environment variable file, we're going to be able to determine whether or not the request that was just sent actually did come from Clerk. So then we're going to say data is equal to json.loads payload, okay? Now, by the way, if this verify here fails, it's going to raise an exception. So we're going to know that this didn't come from Clerk, and then we're going to be able to reject this request. So now we're going to say if data.get, and we're going to say type is not equal to user.created, because this is the only one that we care about. Then we're just going to return, and we're going to say status, and we're just going to put ignored. Okay, so essentially if Clerk sends us any other event that's not user created, we don't care about that. So we can just return status ignored and we don't need to do anything. Otherwise, we're going to say the user data is equal to data.get, and we're going to get data. Otherwise, we're going to get an empty dictionary. So if there's no data, we just get an empty dictionary. We're then going to say the user ID is equal to the user data.get the ID. So we're just trying to get the ID from this event that's occurred. Now, what we'll do down here is we're going to try to create the challenge quota in the database with the user ID. Okay, that's it. Then we're going to return status success. All right, otherwise we're going to have our accept. So we're going to accept exception as E, and we're just going to raise the HTTP exception status code. This time I'm going to go with 401. Okay, and we'll just put string E as the error. All right, that's it. That's all we need for this. And I realize actually we don't need logging or this integrity error thing because I'm not going to use that. So we'll just remove that. And the session here is not what I want. We can actually just remove the type from this and just make it DB. We don't need to bring this session into this. Okay, so I have a feeling I'm going to need to install this. So let's just try to bring this in. So if we go to terminal, we can restart this and type uv add svix. Okay, there we go. So it's added that in now. So this should be good. Okay, perfect. So we've added that as a dependency. And now we can rerun our backend. And I'm going to show you how to set up the webhook. All right, so we're going to go uv run server.py. Okay, all is working. We're going to go here now, and what we're going to do is we're going to set up something called Ngrok. So let me bring this in. This is going to allow us to test this webhook on our local computer. Now, Ngrok is an API gateway. You can install it for free on your computer. Okay, just go to ngrok.com. What you're going to need to do is create an account on Ngrok, and then it's going to give you instructions on how to set it up on your computer. So let me log in and I'll show you. Okay, so I'm logged in, and it kind of shows you the instructions here once you create an account on how to download and configure it. What you need to do is you just need to run this command once it's installed to add your authentication token. Then what we're going to do is we're simply going to run this command, ngrok http, and then actually it's not going to be quite this. It's going to be port 8000, which I'll show you in a second. And what this is going to do is set up essentially a proxy so there can be a live URL, something that anyone on the internet can access to access your API. Now, the reason why we need this Ngrok tunnel, that's kind of what it's referred to as, is because in order for Clerk here to send a request to our backend, it needs to be available on the internet. but we don't really want to deploy this right now because we're just doing this in a development environment. So in order to test it, we can use this kind of temporary URL that connects our localhost endpoint, our localhost API, to the internet. So let me show you how this works. What we're going to do is we're going to open up another terminal. I'm going to assume that you have Ngrok installed. Okay, so make sure you've got it in, and you can type the Ngrok command. And you're just going to type Ngrok HTTP and then 8000. 8000 being the port of your backend server, okay? When you do that, it's going to create a tunnel for us here. And you can see that it gives this forward URL. Now, this URL is what we want to copy. So we're going to copy that forward URL. Okay, perfect. And we're going to use that for our webhook. So we're going to go here to edit. We're going to paste this URL. We're going to put /webhook or /webhooks/clerk. Okay, and then save. So this now is the URL that it's going to send these events to when a new user is created. Now, only last thing that I forgot here, I'm just going to shut down my backend for a second, is I need to connect this webhook API router to my app. So I'm just going to go to app, and I'm going to go to .app or app.include router, and rather than challenge.router, we're going to go webhooks.router, and we're going to go prefix is equal to /webhooks. Okay, we need to import webhooks, so we're going to say from .routes, or actually it's already here, so we can just bring in webhooks like that. Okay, and we also don't need this request and response, so I'll get rid of that. All right, so now we have webhooks and API. We can rerun our backend, so uv run server.py. We now should have that set up. So what we want to do is essentially test to see if this is working. The way that we can do that is we can just make a new account that we haven't signed in with already. So I'm going to go sign up. Okay, it's going to bring me to this page, create an account. So I'm going to go okay. Okay, so I'm just going through the flow here to make a new account. And you see that it's loading. It should ask me for a username, I'm imagining here. Let's see. And yes, it asked me for username. So let's go with techwithtim3 or something. Continue, brings us back here. And then you can see that the quota instantly gets refreshed. Now that's because the webhook was sent. If you want to test that, you can go, or you want to see if that's working, you can go to Clerk, can refresh, and you should be able to see the logs of the webhook. So notice that we have 0 error rate, and it shows us that this event was created because a new user happened, and it sent a request to our backend with all of this different information, which of course we can look at anything that we want, but we verified it on our backend, and you can see that the webhook event, if I can scroll up here enough, was posted successfully. Okay. So that is it. That is a lot of code that we wrote in this video. It's been a long time since I've done a long tutorial like this, so I hope you guys enjoyed. All of this code will be available from the link in the description. A massive shout out again to Clerk for sponsoring this video and supporting me while I was creating it. It is awesome to be able to use this authentication because it just works so damn well. And it is so easy to set everything up. From here, you could just go, you can mess with all of the different connectors. And honestly, I use Clerk even though they weren't sponsoring me beforehand. So it's just a blessing that they were able to actually partner with me on this video. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in another one.